listening to episode 288 of Mitolife Radio. I'm Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Victor Sagalovsky once again. This is his fourth time on the show. He's talked about deuterium and the benefits of deuterium depletion on two previous episodes. One other one was on the benefits of bee products. I would say in this one, he gets a lot more philosophical, but there's also a lot of practical information about the benefits of depleting deuterium in your body. So he talks about the cancer connection with deuterium, talks about how much deuterium is in your average glass of water. He talks about how the metabolic water that our cells create is deuterium depleted, the anti-aging effects of deuterium, and we talk about other subjects, including human photosynthesis. It was a book that I gifted him a few years ago, and he talks about all of the health benefits of melanin. I asked him about his thoughts on singing bowls and sound therapy and how that interacts with the water in our body. I asked him where deuterium comes from. Gets esoteric, talking about his theory on what the Ark of the Covenant was. We talk about life extension and practical things to do to support that. And then I ask him listener questions, including his thoughts on hydrogen-enriched water, sunlight exposure, and its role in deuterium depletion. What is the right parts per million of deuterium for daily water consumption? And he misheard that as pH, so it worked out because he shared his thoughts on pH and water and why alkaline water is often misleading. It was a really fun discussion. I always love talking to Victor, so enjoy the lively discussion. Here is Victor Sagalovsky. All right, Victor Sagalovsky, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be on the show again, Matt.
Yeah, we actually ran into each other at a health conference. I think it was, late last year?
Late last year, yeah.
Yeah, we've been chatting for several years. We have a lot of the same interests, like advanced technology, suppressed technology, longevity, this health optimization. And you and Robert Slovak started Litewater together, right? Which is the deuterium depleted water company.
That's right. At least in the United States, we're the first importer, and now we're deeply involved in working to build our own factory here in the U.S. So I'm deeply involved in the technology side now. Yeah, it's an interesting journey. I think it's been, that's for sure. It all started because I wanted to drink PDW myself. So
yeah, because you've been studying human longevity for quite a while, right?
Ever since I realized I was getting older. My early 20s, trying to piece together information from the standard information that we come up with in public school and parse that against things that are more observational and eventually become common sense and become a challenge to the paradigm paralysis, which we think is the greatest thing of all time. So I think, we're interested in future tech because it's going to solve the problems we have today. And the problem that I saw was health span. And then I started reading the yogic texts and talking about, you could be immortal if you do this. Well, there's a science to this, apparently, but who knows this science? And what can we use of those, of what we gain in, the last 40 generations or 50 generations of humans to what we've come to now. So, I've always been fascinated by something that will keep my mind active. And I have a pretty active mind. So, and plus, I'll say this, if you start off really early in life and you don't trust anything, you'll get better at asking questions.
Yeah, for sure. I hung out around the transhumanist people, and I had a show on it recently, and it's interesting to hear their perspective because their whole thing is using technology to enhance us, whether it's implants, augmentation internal or external. Obviously
Well,
Neuralink.
they missed that day in class where they talked about ancient yoga practices. So the transhumanism should be of a biological nature, because all it points to is, hey, we don't have the manual for something, so we're going to figure out we're going to give our interpretation on this because we lost the manual. It happens all the time. Something great is lost, and then humans try to recreate it, and it's never perfect the way it was the first time. Sometimes maybe it could be the same or better, but usually we are assembling things we don't have all the pieces. So in lieu of having all the pieces, technology looks very inviting. It looks like a solution, but it's not. Technology is already here. It's within us, because there can't be a better technology. When you rate it against everything else, it still comes out as the most incredible thing nature has devised. So to understand it better, the choice between that and trying to augment yourself with tech, because you only have a limited amount of time during the day. So is it going to be external tech, or use the best of everything? God, like they say, God sends you a boat, a car, and a motor, and a helicopter. All the tools that you need if you ask the right questions ultimately come. My question was, what's the right water to drink? And then the answer came, and I'm like, well, I still have a problem because I don't have any. So now we have some, and it's exciting because it's difficult. It's not like, I found the secret. Let's put it under the sun or under the full moon and say your incantation and your gold crystal stir around and you have Matt. No, it's like we're using the best of our minds and technology to get to something where the goal is one thing. It's energy. We're trying to increase the amount of energy or conserve the amount of energy that we have. That's happening on a conscious level, and it's happening on a completely unconscious level. The body's just trying to survive. So like everything in the universe, it becomes a big energy game. So almost 99% water by molecular weight, then, start there. Yeah, start there.
Absolutely. Yeah. The reason why I brought up transhumanism is I think, like you said, they're missing the boat on, you mentioned like yogic practices, but I just think even what we're aware of in the health community, like heavy metal toxicity, there's EMFs, there's, industrial seed oils that we're consuming, like engine lubricants, and that's part of it. And then you get a little deeper, like another layer in, and it's like spring water versus filtered water. And like everybody's battling, spring water's better. It's raw. It's more living. When you filter it.
It started out okay. How did it get to you? There's things like that. My friend always says a rose is not made from spare parts. So you have to start at the core of something. So all these Band-Aids are just that. And certainly the conversation around things that we've taken for granted, like, oh, water comes from the tap. Oh, food, it comes from the store. That conversation is still yet to happen. We're that young of a culture or society or we've actually devolved. There's a devolution process that's happened too. Like I looked at a menu of a restaurant in 1899. And I looked at the scholastic achievement tests for somebody in the 1890s. And when you look at the questions and what was offered on the menu, it's a definite devolution. It's a devolution of choice, really. Less choice of words because you're more stupid or you're ignorant, and you have less choice of ingredients, right? Less choice of biodiversity. And the biodiversity is what keeps us engaged. You can sit still in nature for a long time because you have the input of nature. But if you sit still in a four-walled room for a long time, you're going to go apeshit crazy because there's nothing of nature in it except you. So nothing to inform or reflect on. And when the transhumanism is ultimately going to lead these people to understand that, technology's here. It's within. And you just get to that through a very interesting way. Like we have now AI chat GPT. Okay, it's not artificial intelligence, but it communicates like it's alive, right? It can speak. Okay, it hallucinates a lot, but it can speak. And ultimately, we come to find out, as I'm seeing with this, that it's only garbage in, garbage out. So it's only as good as the prompt engineer. So if you don't have critical thinking, if you don't have simple reasoning skills, if you can't apply logic to something, if you have no vocabulary, if you have no liberal arts education, essentially, or multidisciplinary education, that garbage that comes out of that machine is going to be yours. So if you're more educated, that takes work, by the way. That's not something that you can download. So if you have that, then you become ready inadvertently for this interactive future. So, the irony is it happens at a time when our language skills are at an all-time low. This is when, if you spoke like a Victorian era American, that would be more ideal for your prompt engineering. Okay. But because we've dumbed down, it's very funny because these things come to us when we're at a low point in that sense. Same thing with our food and our water. Even though we're at a technological high point, we're, I think, at a low point in terms of integrating those things that we're already hard fought for. We already learned all the folk wisdom, all the folk medicine, all the things that come down to us in books and oral traditions. And we don't use it because, at least I don't see that it's as precious to people as soon as they realize that they think that access to information is the same as having that integrated into you. So I have access. I'll look it up. You're a worthless old man. I'll just, ChatGPT told me you're wrong, even though they'll believe the AI that's hallucinating over somebody that's authentic.
Have you heard about the AI now that can analyze studies? I forget if it was China or Japan created an AI that can look at clinical studies and get a conclusion. I read about it yesterday.
I'm working on that too, and anybody can, because there's a lot of open source tools. And what you do is you feed it a data set that you want it to use. Be careful it doesn't hallucinate, and everything is factual. So, but there's an art to it. And yes, it's amazing because, like right now, the most inclusive depository of anything written on Deuterium Depletion or DDW, and basically a library assembled of, a few hundred documents in every language, anything you can find on DDW, I think I have it. So for that to be like a quickly, easily referenced oracle, that's very interesting. And that's something within the scope of what the current AI can do. And even better, if it's well trained, then it'll return the references too. So not only that you could take its word for it, but where's the reference to that? Where's the citation? That's important. It's important if you're academic. If you're experiential, it's a different story. But anytime you try to anchor a new concept, you have opposition. But the science doesn't prove us. The science supports us. It doesn't prove us wrong. It only supports us. So, and scientific method is also not perfect too, because they don't acknowledge that the experimenter with their mind and their intention can affect the experiment. So we're not there at the unified field yet, but it's going to help us get there because it'll allow us to parse information a little bit better, at least for me, because I tend to produce information or connect dots faster than I can catalog my findings. And then also the redundancy angle too. So it's just a tool to get clearer. And it's fascinating. It's something profound in the sense of technology that could have been here 30 years ago. And in many cases it was. But what's profound is that we have such an intimate relationship with language that as soon as that relationship gets challenged or reshaped, it's a really big deal. And we have a relationship with information too. It used to be that the guy's house you wanted to hang out with was the guy that had all the records, or the place I wanted to be was at the library. Why? Because they had the things that not only are good for the senses, but that allow us to evolve our intellect and understanding, knowledge, knowledge base. So that's where I don't even know what the question was. But it's just the things that I think about. And, I just think in an ontological sense, like the meaning of meaning and how that, again, like how is that going to help me ask good questions? Because ultimately this is where my problem, everybody's problem lies. Are you going down a path you shouldn't be going because you didn't ask the question right? You didn't ask the right question. It's usually not because you got the wrong answer. It's usually because the question wasn't answered properly. So the incredible thing, if you follow that through, this is what got us to the 21st century. And now we're at a crossroads because it's like I told someone the other day, we're in the smartest of times, we're in the dumbest of times. And that, it hurts.
Yeah. Have you seen Idiocracy, that movie?
Some people say
it was a documentary because, Hulk Hogan's when the the
Oh,
RNC,
yeah.
he was ripping off his shirt on stage. I just thought of Camacho, President Camacho. It was just
Yeah,
like, we're there.
yeah. Fiction has become reality, which is a good thing too, because it means that other fictions or fantasies that I may believe in of a better nature or less idiotic nature can also come true. Maybe we can have a room temperature superconductor. Maybe we can double our lifespan. Maybe some of these things are possible too, though. We said, no, you can't, you'll never have that. When you look at the quotes of famous people and saying all the things that would not happen, and they were completely certain, absolutely, they died on that hill, So that's the one thing we can always look forward to is there's something new around the corner. But if you don't ask the right question, then the answer you get is meaningless because it's not what you really needed.
Yeah. Well, it's a good setup to the deuterium subject because I had you on also with Robert. I think this is the fourth time, if my math is right.
We did the B Products podcast. The B show.
Yeah, that's right. And this topic's fascinating because I think some people have told me, oh, that's just a trend or, it's just expensive water. It's a biohacking thing.
Yeah.
But when you look at, like, I have Gabor Smaliu's book and you said there's a bunch of studies on it. The relationship with cancer, that's kind of where it started. Is that right?
Where it started was just trying to understand why certain populations living in near Eskimo conditions had a longer lifespan, wider health span, primarily were disease-free, very strong genetic. They developed even though small population groups, and also being able to give birth to an older age. And they didn't have any paved roads or medicine, so what gives? And they discovered ultimately after trying to analyze their diet, genetics, all this stuff, in the late 50s that their water was 16% lower, their drinking water was 60% lower in deuterium. So experiments were conducted. To that point, this is in the 50s, to that point, up in the late 30s, when it was discovered that there's such a thing that can be made as heavy water, because it has to be synthesized in the lab, pure heavy water, not H2O, D2O. And so 35% heavy water in a bottle, which doesn't exist in nature. If you drink that, third, fourth day, you're dead, metabolically. So, because it doesn't allow, it's like cyanide. It stops mitochondrial function. So, but it looks and tastes like water. So they knew, okay, this is bad. Then the Russians figured out, well, if it turns out you have these populations here that have less deuterium in their water than the average, so more, we know more is bad, now we know less is good. And then they did the experiments with plants, animals, humans, and basically said, yeah, less deuterium is good, more deuterium is bad. And then at first, the science was all about, well, it's obviously because of the kinetics of it. You have a proton-neutron pair versus a proton, it's twice the mass, it's slower, everything that's involved in it is slower. It's like dragging your dead brother around with you everywhere, like is attached to you. Okay. And so you're not fun at parties anymore. And so they had this understanding that it slows everything down, so less deuterium is better, more deuterium is worse. And then some more in-depth investigation happened, like with Dr. Ogun, and discovered the mechanical problem with the ATP synthase nanomotor, how it actually damages the mitochondria, that we have a mechanical problem with this isotope of hydrogen that's twice the mass. So, and then deuteronomics came about, which is the study of how deuterium is managed in the body, because it turns out metabolic water, the water our bodies make as a substrate for the energy production that we create in the form of ATP, not even talking about the whole melanin equation, although that's important. But that water is deuterium depleted. The water we make is like 60 to 80% deuterium depleted than what we drink. So we know deuteronomics says, hey, we have a strategy, deuteronomics management strategy, and it's gone haywire for different reasons. So we have that mitochondrial component, we have the kinetic component, we have the DNA, quantum tunneling we can get into later. And so that's really where it started. It started over time of people that took interest in it over a nearly 70-year period. And that's why there's so much on it, and yet nobody knows anything about it. Because for a long time, there was nothing available that you could actually use, drink water. So it was all very heady and theoretical and privileged. Other than the studies, there was no personal feedback from people, qualitative type. The only thing qualitative you had was people that live in areas where you naturally have less deuterium. And of course, the plants and animals that died when you give them too much deuterium. But then, just like anything, as you create a wider user base, you can really push the science and the knowledge of something. To go back to Shamlai and cancer, where it started for him was in graduate school. I think it was in the late 80s. And he also honed in on deuterium. And he goes, well, kinetically, it's a problem, right? So, and we have probably the best deuterium testing lab in the US for measuring your body's deuterium level using saliva or other liquids if we choose to do so. But saliva is a good marker. Breath vapor is another good marker. So said, okay, well, there's a ratio between D and H, right? And then his hypothesis all the way in graduate school in Hungary was that if that ratio of deuterium to hydrogen in the body changes, that turns certain genes on and off, oncogenes. So some people have more prevalence of potential for cancer in their genetic makeup. If you epigenetically mess with this, it's good and bad. Too much deuterium will turn a tendency to get an oncological tendency in your genome to turn on. I think there's P53 gene, delete, and why elephants don't get cancer, all this stuff, but it's genetic, right? Some people have more predisposition for this, not just environmental or viral. If you reduce that ratio in favor of protium hydrogen versus deuterium hydrogen, then you turn off those oncogenes. And this is why I believe we're censored on Wikipedia, because this is a big discovery, because you can do a lot of prevention with this. Oh, I'll just lower my deuterium level and I'll make sure that my dangerous genetics don't affect me. Some people are seriously paranoid, like they'll get their breasts removed when they don't have cancer because their mother died of breast cancer. Okay, so it's coming for me, So, well, let's turn off those oncogenes by reducing deuterium. So this is his life's work, and the thing is, it's nobody else's life's work. So it becomes, it's one guy, it's a crazy hypothesis. But in order to get as far as he did, we actually have to start making the water. So you have to be obsessed with it, I think. You have to be obsessed with first, you have to believe it, or at least be convinced yourself. Whether it's externally or internally, be convinced that this is something I really want to get into. And so for a lot of people, it's a bankrupt subject. They don't talk to me about water. Like my parents, tap water, it's fine. The city, you pay your taxes, city takes care of you. It's filtered, it's good. So it's a bankrupt subject. We always trusted the food pyramid. Like, it's food pyramid. What do you mean? It's upside down. Nonsense. Forget it. So, because it's really the harsh reality of the wake-up call is stress is a real killer on the nervous system. And nothing like figuring out your life to stress you out. So stay ahead of it. They won't let that research on Wikipedia. Okay, that's fine. It's not about the water anyway. It's about how your body manages deuterium. It's just, you want to talk about biohacks? I don't even like that word. But if you want to put a crown on the biohacking Christmas tree, this is it. Because we truly are taking the best of nature, going, okay, how do we make it even better? With nature's approval, we do it. And people can benefit short-term, long-term, trend or no trend. People thought the internet was a trend. People thought flying machines were a trend. People thought distilling water was a trend. And then reverse osmosis. And now you just have a new standard. It's a bitter cruelty is that it's not an easy standard to reach like the previous two. First one, you boil it. Second one, you have a membrane, which is a little bit more space-age technology. And the third one, it's brute force hydrology in a capsule, in a tube. So
that was awesome.
I tend to be long-winded, so cut me off at any time.
As the guest, I think people appreciate let the guest talk as much as they want and, jump in when I can. So I'm moving on to more acreage from 20 to over 100 acres. And right now I'm building out an underground bunker, and there's a lot of people working over there, and a small cabin's getting restored.
Since we last saw each other, I also have a food forest going, but keep going, tell me more.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you have to come and see it. It's going to be built out through the winter, but it was built in the 90s, I think is a Y2K thing, and it was partied in by kids. So there was trash and it was
Oh,
busted up.
you already have an underground
That's
facility.
correct. I just need to extend it and seal it. And it has a built-in pyramid. I need to find someone to build me a capstone, like a polycarbonate capstone. It's a huge underground
And
pyramid.
this is like the adjacent property where I visited you, or
It's close by, still North
okay,
Idaho,
so
and
you can do a lot with 100 acres. Not much of a grow season there, but
I'm putting up a dome before the winter, so it'll be my third or fourth. I think I'm losing count. Third dome or something from growing spaces. So it's a polycarbonate geodesic dome
yeah,
with geothermal. I think I'm going to do propane electric heat in there. Wood stove as a backup heat. And I already have 2 avocado trees growing. I have citrus producing.
in Idaho.
So in Idaho, yeah, it's amazing.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but I bring this all up not to brag, but I wanted to tell you that I brought a box of light water. I've been getting the 10 ppm, which for the listener, that refers to 10 parts per million of deuterium per bottle. And I've been giving that to the people, the crew working on the mountain. And I think they said the water felt thicker. And I just gave them a quick elevator pitch. Usually what I say when they're like, what is this? And I say, well, water's not just H2O. There's, there's isotopes.
Well, actually, water is it's supposed to be just H2O, and there's this other stuff in it.
And I say protium, deuterium, or tritium, right? And tritium's rare, but either the hydrogen in H2O is usually either protium or deuterium, right? But there's like a few drops.
One out of every 6,420 atoms of hydrogen, there'll be one that's a deuterium. So that's how prevalent it is. So what is that? 1 out of every 3,200 molecules of water will be a semi-heavy water.
Okay.
So one hydrogen, you're not going to get D2O is very rare, but you got one hydrogen and one deuterium, and this is the hydrogen and this is the deuterium, and then you got the oxygen over here, normally you have 2 hydrogen and oxygen, then you got hydrogen and, this deuterium. And it's shorter bond angle too, so it's hard to get rid of it. I'm telling you, it's like somebody you can't get rid of, constantly following you around.
So just to clarify, 1 out of every roughly 3,200 H2O molecules, one of those
will be HDO.
Okay.
Or HOD. I don't know what the right way is, because it's HOD or HDO,
okay.
Whatever. But the point is, it's not H2O, it's HDO. So in 1 glass of water, you're going to have probably 3 drops of HDO.
Okay. Yeah, that's easier to, I think, for most people to visualize.
And if you can get David Copperfield over and say, David, I need you to raise those drops to the top of the glass and then float them away, we will have pure deuterium depleted water. You will those little bastards out of your water. But unfortunately, it takes some really advanced technology to separate water from water, because oxygen can't tell the difference between a heavier hydrogen and a lighter hydrogen. So it grabs it and it becomes water. Oxygen had a central nervous system that would say, this one, it would discriminate. Say, I want this hydrogen, not this one. So biology and intelligence had to be created to limit that from our energy production pathways. And we get overrun, we get overrun.
Yeah.
And so this is a way to reset and really, in that mitochondrial sense, wind back the clock in terms of the accumulation of deuterium. You're genetically predisposed, even in your subconscious, that as you age, your deuterium level will rise. You may have 4 to 5 grams of deuterium in your body, and it will slowly, like if you have 1 deuteron, right, 1 proton electron pair, one proton neutron electron pair, the deuteron, in the place of a hydrogen, where is that most detrimental? Where is that going to hurt you the most?
Mitochondria.
Zoom in even further. In your DNA.
Oh, the DNA. Oh.
Because 1 out of every 300 base pairs, instead of a hydrogen, it's going to have that heavier deuteron. It's like the fruit is too big for the tree. It's going to cause that limb to break or sag, but essentially it's going to manifest as a distortion. What if there's more than 1? What if there's 2 300 base pairs? What happens? Distortion leads to improper replication.
Interesting.
And in that double helix, because the geometry has to be perfect. Where else does the geometry have to be perfect? Collagen is a triple helix. If that geometry is off, it will have improper replication. And then every time, let's say you wrap something and you catch a piece of sand in there, that bump gets bigger as you keep wrapping. It's always deep in there. You can't get it. So it's like sand in your most precious components, you know. So they're sealed afterwards. They go, oh no, I sealed it. Oh no, what do I do now? I have to do a complete rebuild because I got a little bit of sand in there. And eventually it's not going to hurt at first, but eventually it will be your undoing. And deuterium is that undoing for all of us. One of them. I enjoy studying the things that I believe are impossible, like immortality, radical life extension, levitation, superconducting elements, telepathy. I enjoy that because what we know is impossible. And yet we are proven wrong all the time. And so I just honed into, energy. And, you gave me a great book, Human Photosynthesis. And I've started communicating with Dr. Herrera and invited him to speak at our conference in November at the Water Symposium. Because I knew about that issue, but he explains it in a much more academic level than previous scholars on the subject. And it just, again, we don't have to go into the nitty gritty other than it's your energy. It's really what it's about. And we are dynamic beings. Like we have unique fingerprints. We have a unique energy print and how we...
Did he talk about the coupled versus uncoupled mitochondria? Because I think you've gone down that rabbit hole, I believe, in our discussions. And I think I'm primarily European, like if the DNA tests I've done are right, 99%. And supposedly my haplotype and my blueprint is mostly uncoupled mitochondria. So that's why I feel better in North Idaho it was like -30 Fahrenheit last winter. And I feel the best in the middle of winter. Like just something about the cold. And I guess my type makes, I'm able to make a lot of infrared heat, basically, which is basically light from the inside out.
If you run hot, that's better than running cold. Mm-hmm. Much better. Yeah, if you tend toward hypothermia, that's great. That's fantastic. And we do generate our own heat. I remember 20 years ago, people were selling these underwear and tights and socks that will reflect the infrared back into you. So you'd be like a capacitor. And you can do that by embedding tourmaline and on other gems and exotic ceramics into fabrics, because it's fantastic because you're keeping your energy in. So for injuries, it never caught on, at least maybe in
I wear those every day. Yeah. Imana, my friend at Gemba Red sells those shirts, and they're bioceramic embedded, like white.
Yeah, they caught on with a few people, but they didn't really become like it should be everywhere. Lululemon pants should be made from that. But it never really caught on in that respect. But most people are just not. They're still at the rock salt level of consciousness. So how is your biofield going to enter the conversation? Yeah. So, but yeah, that's I find a couple interesting things with mitochondria. One, I find the mitochondria is found, now they've found evidence there's free floating mitochondria like in the blood. Like it'll transport itself. Like, this factory's got to move. Like on the road when they're moving houses, and you got the car in front with the wide load, So they found mitochondria moving through the blood, which is quite fascinating. Also, that motor that makes ATP can reverse spin and start going the other way, and that flow can change, and that's serious disease state. But it happens also when you overdo things too much. We're all like antioxidants. There's an inhibitory point. So beyond that, there's a theoretical maximum of how much energy you produce. If you try to reach that, if you try to go over that, then that will create problems too. In the mechanics of energy production. But then the whole thing about the melanin I find fascinating is that it's saying that, and Herrera and others are saying that through his theory of human photosynthesis, this basically turns biochemistry on its arse because it puts foundation into question and it unsettles it. Really beautifully too, because what it's saying is that mitochondria and ATP is a source of energy, but it's not the primary one. And ATP is really the energy that you need for your metabolism to maintain that 98.6 degrees. Okay, imagine trying to maintain your house, what your heating bill would be, right? And you got this brain up here that requires so much power. So that's a mitochondrial energy source. But then you have melanin, which, what does it do? It cracks water, disassociates, and reduces hydrogen back to water with oxygen. So in that process of breaking water and reforming water, you have energy as a byproduct, right? And that is that nuclear force, that is that nuclear energy that the nucleus needs. Because I asked Herrera, I said, give it to me like an elevator pitch. Okay, we don't have much time. Tell me why, prove this to me. Okay, and pretend I'm an arrogant scientist. And he said, where does the energy in the nucleus of the cell come from? And it's just like sodium potassium pump. They say leaky channels. Same thing with the energy of the nucleus. Oh, it just gets shuttled in there. Oh, it just goes through the membrane and gets shuttled in the brain, goes past all these cells. So it just slithers its way in, right? It's just delivered where there's no door. Okay. It got in through a quantum field, but it teleported there. But that's the big question, because the answer is that there's no mitochondria in the nucleus of the cell. So how did the energy get in there? It's because melanin surrounds that nucleus. As water comes in, it gets broken into oxygen and hydrogen. Those get used. Then it gets reformed and tossed back out. And it's incredibly elegant because it's so simple. And the making of ATP energy is so complex because it has this deuterium issue and other issues of contaminants and creating layers and membranes and exchanges that keep the motor clean. Right?
Yeah.
But in the nuclear model, you have melanin, which takes anything as an energy source. If you look at mitochondria, it needs specific source of energy that gets broken down from food and some sunlight. It can translate a few wavelengths of light into chemical energy instead of heat. 660, 830. So it changes the viscosity in the mitochondria, allows faster flow, more energy is created, but it's very specific. Melanin can take anything as an energy source. Any spectrum, any wavelength, visible, invisible, X-ray, thought form. It has figured out a much better evolutionary path because it says wherever I am in space or the universe, I can use anything for energy, to crack water, for electrolysis, anything. So, that's why I think there's a conversation that still hasn't happened or needs to happen, not from a film major.
Yeah. I noticed on social media, like I'm mostly on Instagram, and people are definitely catching on. I think the younger crowds, or I don't know, middle age, whatever, they're definitely hip to the melanin thing, not slathering on a ton of sunscreen and naked sunbathing. And yeah, I definitely think there's something to that. And then also you could overdo it with
people
photo
think
aging.
They think it's an external thing. The melanin is there and the inside of your nucleus of every cell. And
yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's producing energy for you. And everybody in biochemistry goes, well, nobody will look at biological transmutation either. As soon as you try to have that conversation with somebody, their programming really takes over. They want to shut you down real fast. It's uncomfortable. And all of a sudden you're stupid. I want the people to do this professionally to have a conversation, not the guy that just asks questions. So, but no, thank you, because you turned me on the book and the person that's really at the forefront of this. And it's like these people are working in a vacuum and they're discovering things that are very valid. And they usually come from being a practicing doctor because they observe some things that don't make sense based on what they learned in school with what they're seeing in practice. And the answer from the wider academic body is get out of our way. And for guys like us, it's exciting. This is what our conference is going to be about. It's exciting because let's give ourselves the room to discuss these things that they say, oh, well, you can't talk about it. You don't have a PhD in molecular biology. Like, why can't I talk about it? I have the access to the information. I can speak your language. I don't need to have your degree. I don't need you as my peers to tell me I'm one of you. I need myself to tell me that I understand what you're saying. And then my critical faculties decide if you're bullshit or not. But I have to speak your language to know if what you're saying is, it's just all hypothesis. So I noticed in your journey, you've tried many different things. And ultimately, I'm curious what ultimately informs you, what works. And my guess is that it's your experiential.
And experience of people I talk with too, and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I found, as we know, it's so individual, and one supplement's not for everybody, but I think there's few things to Deuterium water probably is for everybody.
There's a few things that are for everybody. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we all share the same biology, and that goes for plants and animals too. These are foundational things, and they happen to be around water and components of water, hydrogen and oxygen. This is the base of the chemistry. Everything that attaches to that substrate that has that in their lattice, and it gives it original form to combine with other things to create the reality that we live in. I'm not saying we found the answers. I'm saying it's where we're going to find them. That's my 2 cents on it. Yeah. In the simplicity and the complexity, you're going to find the question. It's like, why does this have to be so complex? Well, that's a good question. And then in the simplicity, you're going to find the answer. It's just like when I dry fast or when I fast, when you remove things, then it's like an empty glass. It has more potential than a full one. So it's that potential to be filled with knowledge or new information. So it's exciting. You're filling yourself with new information in the sense that you now have 100 acres to deal with, and you're not going to let it just sit there. You're going to do something with it. You're going to create a reality there. You're going to inform your environment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In the context of this conversation, by Friday, there's currently only one well, and it's only 2 gallons a minute production, which is small. But with a cistern, doesn't matter. Put a 8,000, 10,000 gallon cistern in, and just trickle fills, and you have a lot of
water. You have a lot of good water up there. It's very nice.
And I'll test it for the deuterium content. But the water up here is definitely different. I mean,
it's some of the best water in the country in terms of deuterium level, and some of those glaciated streams in terms of mineral content or bioavailable bicarbonates. It's very nice up there. It's kind of, I guess, the trade-off for the short growing season and cold, long winters. You get good water and other food. That's the other thing. If you have water settled, you have to, if in this day and age, if we're going to the store to get our food, we're behind the 8 ball. Either set up your relationship with your farmers or grow your own and create your own distribution network as well, and cultivate a sophisticated alchemy of food medicine.
People always ask my diet, and lately it's been like eggs, sourdough, ground beef, steak, wild rice or white rice, butter, cream. That's most of it. So.
Yeah, it's a good healthy diet. And then you start looking at where's that cream from? What kind of rice is it? What type of grain is it? How many chromosomes does the grain have?
I went the next level, Wild Food Warehouse. I don't know if he still sells it. It was my friend Ben. He was into I think he's still into the rewilding, the foraging, but it's hand harvested wild rice from Minnesota. So it's like direct.
They also call that Manitoba grass seed. Not technically a rice, but my point is that now that you have a great diet, you can get into more of the nuances of is this a cow that came from Texas or is this a cow that came from Idaho? Because the meats can be very different. How was it raised? How was it finished? And then you really get into a sophisticated deuterium depletion management strategy and proper mineralization. I'm putting a food force together right now because I am still interested in the frugivore. But again, if you want to eat exotic fruits, you have to have a ready supply. So I've planted it and increasing the biodiversity of that. But as far as fat and protein, everything in nature is always hungry. Sugar is a little easier to come by. Amino acids and fats are harder to come by. And the reason everything in nature is hungry is because the mitochondria is hungry. Whereas melanin is not so hungry. It says, I could eat, I could not eat. My fridge is full at all times. And the mitochondria is always like, I need food, what do I do? That's its role in the relationship with nuclear DNA.
In your view, is it reliant on glycogen, the liver and in the skeletal muscle?
Well, it's important to have the glycogen always up because you never know when you're going to need it. You can shift your body to run on glucose, obviously, is the preferred acetoacetate ketones. Our brain, let's say, can only run on glucose. There's some conflicting information that actually can run on fat. We are so adaptable, even to the point where people go without food. Not many, but again, I like to study the impossible, and I've met these people. No food or water. There's the dry fasters that do heroic 10-day, 12-day fasts of no food or water. And then there's just people that don't eat or drink, period. There are very few of them. I'm convinced they exist. I've met them. And I try to understand what's the science behind their operation. And melanin is my only explanation because you need energy from somewhere to create energy. And the creation of energy, the simplest form of creation, it's like what's an atomic bomb? It's pretty simple when you think about it. It just sets off a chain reaction. Whether it's fusion or fission, it's a chain reaction. But look at the consequences. It's a lot of energy. So same thing if you in chemistry class, the professor says we're going to make water, and he takes an equal amount of oxygen gas and equal amount of hydrogen gas. And says, stand back, I'm going to ignite them. Okay. The spark is the ignition. Well, the ignition for melanin is anything. Okay, that's the fuel. And the spark is anything. So, you rub two things together. So when you take the oxygen, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen, you put them together, and the first time you witness that in chemistry class, you hear a big boom. There's an explosion. Well, that energy gets used. So we understand how energy is made in the body, the closer we'll get to, forget about transhumanism, we'll really understand how nature works. And then some people have, and they radically extend their lifespan, and they're not talking. Why would they? It's almost, if somebody doesn't come to it themselves, then are you really worthy of the information? It's almost like when you know something, and then somebody comes to you and says, oh, hey, bro, you figured it out. Welcome to the tribe. What do you mean? Why didn't you come and tell me? No, we're waiting for you to figure it out on your own. Because then it means something to you. Otherwise, how meaningless is our cell phone to us? Even though it's a tool, but it's meaningless in the sense that you don't go, oh my God, if I lose this, how do I recreate it? If my car breaks down, how do I fix it? It's gone. It must be meaningless to you. So our bodies are meaningless to us in the sense that, oh, I'll just go to the doctor, or how do I fix it? But it's self-healing organism, so you don't need to worry about that. But if you're looking at a device that you're so tied in with, emotionally and informationally, and just your whole life is on it, and yet you wouldn't be able to recreate it if you broke it. So how valuable is that? Must not be valuable enough. Some of my old hippie friends, they try to print everything out. Because then hard copies are, it's like, if it's not, it's like a house, a picture of a house isn't going to give you shelter. Information on a CD isn't readable unless it's printed out or you can see it.
Someone sent me a funny prepping video on Instagram. It was a guy that stockpiled DVD movies, like old classics instead of food. And I think his wife was making fun of him or something. He had a whole collection. I was thinking in my bunker, like that'd be cool, but probably put all these movies on a little hard drive, right? Instead of taking up a whole room.
Sure. Well, redundancy is important. When I worked in Hollywood, I learned if your data exists in one place, it doesn't exist anywhere at all. And that's why it hits so hard when someone dies and the things they take with them, they could have taught somebody potentially and left, but sometimes they take things to the grave with them that would make life easier for humans or certain discoveries. So that's lost. It wasn't uploaded it's re-uploaded back into the cosmic data bank, but it's not usable information here. So I find that the study of longevity should be the most important science because all the other sciences are dependent on you being healthy and alive. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Like you're trying to figure out incredible concepts, but it's doing nothing for the human. It's just all mind. The human's so much more than just mind. And when you tune into that experientially, it's very humbling.
Well, where my mind's going, information is stored in water, right? And so
well, you're the water, you're the hard drive. And it's about how coherent is the water, because the more coherent it is, the more information it can store. So it's like the difference between being young and having a young brain that hasn't learned many things, and having one that is well educated, well categorized, well stored, proper recall ability, just a high IQ, high intelligent quotient, combined with a really high or sophisticated emotional sense, essentially a cool head main thing, as they say in Hawaii. It's cool head is the main thing, emotion wise. But the information in the water is, when our water leaves us, I think water is all one. I think we talked about this last time. I've been bringing up this concept in other podcasts, where I think all water in the universe is all one organism, one entity, and it exists in this quantum state where it's connected throughout the entire universe. One organism that takes residence in your body, takes residence in the ocean. But it's ultimately one consciousness that exists in multi-dimensions, in this omni-dimension. And it touches in the fourth dimension, the third dimension. Certain principles of higher dimensions are the ones that follows, and not the lower dimensional principles. So, like a child is very confused when his life is filled with stress and incoherence. And a child is very much in its perfect state in the moment of themselves, when everything is joyful and playful and safe. And water tends to those ideals, because those are ideals of the fourth dimension. Love is all there is. So it gets confused by that dissonance, the stress of negative thoughts. And if you have too many of them, they'll just say, I want out. Get me out of this negative thought form vessel. And then you get cancer and nothing will cure you, because your water wants out, until you start changing, because it's a child. It only can play. And you start putting it to work in a sweatshop. It's like, I'm out. So water has that universal consciousness. And I think it's the water within us that connects us, because it's all one hyper, super intelligent entity. And this is just, talk about theories that don't have any basis to them or no proof. But that's my hypothesis.
I love it. So in my concrete pyramid, for the first time since buying it, I have a crystal singing bowl set, and it's just a basic, I don't know, I have 5 or 6 bowls, and I brought my big one, the root chakra one, the biggest bowl, and I played it in there, and the acoustics, it just crazy echo currently, until there's stuff in there, I guess. And I was doing it with my friends, and I felt like I had napped after like 3 minutes of playing it.
That's cool.
And the sound thing, I haven't done it in years. And even just doing it myself, I'm getting into this alternate state, and it's affecting the water. Is that how that?
Well, think about it. We talk about melanin and water and how everything is an energy source. And yet we don't have a manual of what energies do what. But we do have something that is unique to animals on this planet, and that's music. We've really jumped in fully into this art form, and it defines us, it drives us, and it gives us meaning. It's just like visual spectrum, the audio spectrum of what we can hear, and the rules of it, the rules of harmony, and the rules of rhythm, and these universal constants that make combinations of sounds and time, and how they're structured, pleasing to our biochemistry, to makes us produce good bliss molecules in our brains. And so, like Tibetan bowls, it's like, or, get in a room with people and start chanting. Okay. No, nothing in particular, just toning. Okay. Have at least 6, 7, more people, the better. And if you walk in there and you are off key, by the time you're in there listening to everybody and that resonance builds, you will heal your voice. You will come into harmony it's like women, if they live together, their menstrual cycles tend to line up. If you can tell a lot about a person's physical condition based on their voice. Mine's a little hoarse right now, but you can tell a lot because there's missing notes in there. So you can see what's missing in some of it. Are they full? Do they resonate? And you can feel that rapidly. I've seen it. If you start toning all together, that person will, at first it won't fit. You give it time, you will go into harmony. And so that's that type of resonance we have with each other, and we have it with nature. And if you go into the micro and nano, this is hydrogen. This is, and it's interplay with the other elements. And so again, it's really, we start focusing on basics. We'll answer all the questions that we have. And it's not even about being incredibly smart. It's just being able to discern what intuitively is right and what's wrong. You look at animals and you look at how intuition is so much better than ours, and the reflexes are so much better. And yet you go, I'm just like that. I'm just like that cat or that dog or that fish. I have those reflexes too. I can do that. But it's something of a nature that has to be cultivated, And
I think
you know what I noticed. So I'm trying to figure out how to test a cheap way to test if deuterium depletion works. Okay. And so the cheap way to do it is how fast are your reflexes. When you're young, it doesn't matter. You're quick, but you start getting in your 40s, you start slowing down a little bit, sometimes earlier, sometimes much later. But the reflexes are a lot, and cats have reflexes that are like 5 times faster than humans. Fast. So the reflex test it's free, it's online. You look at something and then you press a key, how quickly you can respond. And that is the perfect relationship, the most perfect relationship between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. You can look at the pathways and the neurons and everything, how it connects, how the response, but it's a perfect exchange of sympathetic to parasympathetic. It happens very quick. So I noticed my reaction time was like a teenager, super fast. And I go, of course, because where is there more mitochondria than anywhere else in your body? The wrong answer is the heart. People think, the heart muscle must have the most mitochondria, but it's the retina. So it's saturated like a sardine can for that quick reaction response, that interface between the sympathetic and parasympathetic. It's real fast, And that determines your reaction time, which in many cases can be life or death. So that's where you can prove deuterium depletion. Is if you're 20% deuterium depleted or more, do it before and after or with your friend, and you see how quickly your reaction time is, because your mitochondria is working better. And you have a more manageable, a healthier relationship between parasympathetic and sympathetic. So
that's cool. I remember you've talked about cats and keeping cats to hone your reflexes in maybe our first or second show. I have 2 cats. I didn't declaw them. I don't trim their claws because they're indoor, outdoor. And I rarely get scratched. It's like a couple times a year.
Well, if they like you, they won't scratch you.
Yeah, unless I'm holding them and they're trying to get away. That happened the other day.
Yeah, right. But animals are, when you observe the reflexes of cats, it's quite amazing because they're fearless when it comes to snakes. It's like, I'm just faster than you do. You can't catch me, I'm faster. So, and cats also have an ability, the whole 9 lives thing. You know where that comes from? It's that infrasonic hum. When they, the hum, right? The cat hum. And it's very soothing to us. And that's very low in terms of, it's almost a sub-bass frequency. And so that frequency is an aid to resonate the bones and healing. Like, I can't believe that cat just landed on all 4s off of a 3-story building and he's fine. Well, later that day, he'll be sitting there for the next 5 hours. And that's a healing response to heal any micro fractures in your bones. you know.
Pretty amazing.
So,
Yeah. I,
well,
I,
it's basic. And
I
so, and
both my cats are drinking the light water too. That's all they drink because my male cat Lava, he's peed blood before, and I think that's due to their male cats are more prone to urinary crystals,
yeah,
and
right.
so
It's in the
the
food. Yeah.
vet was recommending distilled water, and I wasn't going to get into light water because he wouldn't get it. I'm like, oh, I have the perfect thing, and I was already diluting their water, but now I just give it to them straight in their water fountain, and they're eating somewhat conventional food. I mean, the best I could find, dry and wet food, but their coat is shiny. Their eyes are bright. People always say how intense Lava's eyes are. And I credit the water as being the main thing. I mean, they're grounding, they're getting sunshine, they're living the ultimate cat life here in the woods, but they're also drinking the DDW.
And the right water. And the right water. That's spoiling them. But yeah, you will notice their coat does get nice when you give them, when their deuterium levels go down. Yeah, it's very shiny. It's same thing with humans. We get shinier when we have less stress. And this is a elemental stress. This is not something we can overcome with our mind. We can overcome the reaction to it. Everybody has to deal with physical limitation as they age, or not. You can say, I'm not going to, and there's been documented cases of people that, they can still climb a mountain at 95. It's a lot less of them. But it's the mind is willing, but the body is weak. And so, because it's energy, and I had a friend that lived to 104, and he always used to say, I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm good once for as good as I ever was. So you still have it in you, but how quickly can you repair? And that becomes the issue. Your ability to repair exceeds your injuries exceed your ability to repair. And then as you get older, it's the wear and tear injuries, essentially, because of the improper replication. And our diet and genetics ultimately have a big part to play in it too. Genetics, I would argue, much more than diet. But if you stray from your genetic predisposition, because we genetically create strategies over time, and then you completely change that epigenetically, that can be bad or it can be good. Usually it's bad because you don't know what you're doing. But sometimes it's really good. Like a population that doesn't eat food for a long time, like meat. And all of a sudden, because of economic conditions, they now are eating meat again. You'll notice that their genetics will revert to something that was when they had that nutrition. Like you'll see populations getting big real fast in like 1 or 2 generations, but they may have been small because they were malnourished in a sense. And then when the predisposition for different fuel source, which they may have lost. So let's say when people migrate from the mountains down to the ocean, and they start eating seafood for a generation or 2, what does that do to early childhood brain development, right? And what does that do if you live at a higher elevation and the adaptation of your hemoglobin? So we all have these adaptations, and they're usually genetic. And then now we have a new adaptation, which is really interesting, and that's hybrid vigor, right? Where you're a hybrid, you have 2 racial identities, and sometimes that creates what's known as hybrid vigor. You see it in animals, you see it in plants. So you see some strange things in nature. Like, you ever seen a liger?
Yeah, I have.
Right?
Yes. Not in person. Yeah.
Well, what happens when you mate a lion and a tiger?
Get a liger.
You get a liger. And what is a liger? Well, he's very docile because he doesn't know who he is. Like, I'm just, leave me alone. I'm not going to eat you. I don't even know. So it shouldn't exist. But genetically, it becomes twice the size of the lion and the tiger. It just doubles their mass. So that's a weird expression of hybrid genetics. But in humans, you see weird hybrid vigor all the time. Like, I had a girlfriend, she was half Japanese and half Irish, and you don't know who you got in the morning. But sometimes you get the best of both, and that's the hybrid vigor. And so we have that now, and we also have that in the foods that we eat too, which is not good. Because, or if it's like like I was talking about polyploidism, the grain, the wheat of of the wheat that we eat in the world today is predominantly polyploid, meaning it has 2 or 3 times more of the genetic chromosomes of the original wheat. So what is this doing to our genetic? So it's like why I am completely against, I am superstitious against eating food that doesn't have any seeds. That's a polyploid. Okay. Or that's how it usually it's not usually, I shouldn't say usually, sometimes it can be done through a regular hybridization, but if you're messing around with the chromosomes and polyploidism, I'm just like, okay, that doesn't feel like it's compatible with my biofield. Tastes good. It just doesn't I understand there's a conscious thing, but I don't feel like my subconscious sees that as food. It's like if you gave your animals, here's light water and here's tap water. They're not going to go, well, I need to see some studies, bro. I'm not convinced. They just know. They smell it. With what? It's not their nose. It's something else. It's their aura. It's their biofield. It's like, this is not compatible with my aura. So I won't eat bananas if I'm not in the tropics. It just doesn't feel like it's compatible with where I am now. It doesn't make any sense. So you're talking about diet. Oh, my diet's good. I eat a little bit of meat, a little bit of grain, but then you got to go deeper. Like did somebody feed this animal too much polysaccharide sugar? So it's
it's a balancing act, right? Of not getting too, I think the word is like neurotic, but also because we can affect a lot with our mind, right?
Well, they have a term for it. They coined the term as orthorexia nervosa. You know that term. When you're overly obsessed or preoccupied with the quality of your food and water, that's a psychological condition. It's a psychological condition where if you're on food stamps, you're still going to buy organic because or you're going to be homeless and you're going to wear blue light glasses. It's like, well, I'm sleeping in a cardboard box, but there's no way those street lights are going to there's no way that blue light's going to ruin my eyes, bro. So orthorexia nervosa, but there's absolute truth in it. And we should be obsessed. But the thing is, we shouldn't be obsessed with the quality of our food and water because it should be part of the food chain and filter down to us. We assume the farmer is doing everything for their benefit. Like I sell DDW because I want to drink DDW. If I'm farming good cows, it's the food that I want to eat. And I filter that down to the consumer. But with factory farming and this capitalist need to turn a mad profit, not just a healthy one, but a mad profit, you are taking the intelligence away from the most intimate relationship we have is what we put in our mouths, right? What feeds us, what sustains us. And we're being cheated on that relationship and we're being gaslit on that relationship. Oh, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And then by the time you start getting angry about it, you already blocked their system of treatment for whatever was in your mind in the first place, according to them. So
I could just say experientially, like I fly down for birthdays every 3 months, 2 months down to San Diego. And the food down there, even the highest end, $300-$400 meal restaurant with a group of people, like nice places, the food quality, something happens to my stomach. It just feels like I ate a brick. When I come up here, just at an intuitive, visceral, experiential level, way higher quality up here. And I don't know, maybe the water plays a huge component. I'm talking about even like the meat and like everything.
I think a big component of that is the ice age and where there were glaciers, where you're at and in those areas. Like I used to imagine growing up in Chicago, as soon as I learned there was an ice age, I would lay in my bed and imagine a mile of ice above me, right? Because that's what it was. And that really created a great mineralization up in those areas. So you're going to have just better food, better soil. Unless you're buying from somebody that's obsessed with what they're doing. Like I'm sure some people in San Diego are, and they build their minerals into the soil and other things, sun, water. And the water is a huge component. The heavier the water, the heavier the food, the heavier your mind. And the lighter the water, the more levity we have. So there was a guy that was very early a NASA scientist that was really early on deuterium depletion. And he went to find DDW. And he ended up finding it in Romania. And then his hotel room before he's flying back, this is in the late 90s, he's like, I'm making a mistake. I have DDW, which is considered, which is from, at that time, it was from a place that was working, close with other atomic elements and stuff like that. I'm a NASA scientist. I'm going to try to fly. I just bought a bunch of this for thousands of dollars. I'm going to try to go back from the Eastern Bloc to the U.S. with this. And they're going to, he figured out I can't do it. I'm going to get in trouble. So it's like, I bought this water for thousands of dollars. I'm going to drink it all. I can't just leave it here. And he's got 2 days in the hotel room. So he just drinks it, all that DDW right there. And he said, after I did that, he said, he felt like he was like walking on a cloud. He said that even though he was in a stressful situation, all that stress disappeared, and he got into a state of happiness and clarity from that rapid deuterium depletion. If you could ask the brain, what does it prefer? More space between cells or more stuff between cells? It's going to say space. Get the crap out, right? Create more space. What does a yoga master tell you? Create more space in the spine. What does a pranayama tell you? Create more space between the breaths.
Less lipofuscin in the lysosome of the cell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or better on top. Yeah.
Right.
That's a great. Yeah. That I wanted to ask, because you mentioned deuterium depletion strategy, and I imagine my current strategy is I don't limit carbs. Like, I only mentioned rice, but I graze on tomatoes for my garden and all sorts of stuff. But my current strategy is mostly just downing a whole bottle when I go in the sauna, ideally more than once a week, and kind of doing like a water change on my body.
Well,
sweating.
Good water in, bad water out. The carbohydrate, your metabolism is so fast when you deuterium depleted that carbs aren't going to bother you, especially good carbs. You're not saturating yourself with only carbs. So there's times for keto and there's times for more of a balanced diet. Like we said about glycogen. I mean, what happens if you're low on glycogen and you need it? If you're driving and you always assume it's a sunny day, you can go. You don't have to put windshield washer fluid in, but then you're really going to miss it when you can't drive because you can't. Your windshield is blocked. So the thing is, it's the wrong carbs. If those carbs are predominantly skewed toward omega-6, then that's a problem. If those carbs are already started to go rancid, that's a problem.
You mean the fats? Fats, right?
Well, carbs have fats in them. If you're consuming whole carbs, whole grains, you're not.
Oh, it's a whole food. You're saying, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're not. That's another problem if you separate the starch from the germ. It's so. Carbs is such a wide word. It encompasses so much. But if it's whole foods, then I had a profound experience in the 90s when I was really early on in the hemp industry, in the hemp foods industry. I helped develop the first hemp protein isolate. I have hempprotein.com was my website. I was really into it. And then I had a shocking kind of revelation from the universe. It said, stop doing this. It says, yeah, it's a business. Start a business. Stop isolating and go back to whole food. So what's wrong with the seed, Nick? Why are you, I need 70% protein. It's like, isolate. What do you really? Because nature gave you this whole food. And so I stopped that business. I sold the domain name. I just got spooked by promoting something that was a fraction of something. Even though here we are selling fractionated water, because that's what it is. But there is better living through chemistry, and then there's hurting yourself through chemistry. Isolating things, the isolates are, again, what are we genetically predisposed to? Now, at the mitochondrial level, we are genetically disposed to less deuterium. So you'd say, okay, it's artificial to create 10 ppm water, but genetically we want it, right? Makes sense. Kind of like methylene blue. It's like, here's synthetic, but yet it's working for us. So, but when you're looking in terms of food, it takes those genetic adaptations and predispositions. They happen very slow if they exist at all, those mutations. And then for the first time in history, you start you start separating the fat from the starch. And the body goes, I'm not used to this. I have to, it's like, why do people get gout and water retention? They're eating salt that's stripped of the minerals. It's iodized salt stripped of all of its chaperones. So the body has to compensate. In order for it to create an isotonic condition, it has to suck all those minerals in. So you're playing with fire. You say, oh, but salt is good. Like, well, its balance is good. Balance is good. And making sure that the pilot light is on is good. But if you don't have if you have to restart the pilot light every time, then, it's like what's easier, being at speed or getting to speed? If you're at speed, it's easy.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. People always tell me, like, why don't you debate your guests? I'm not about to debate you, but I just want to offer a different view.
I love it because I'm always looking for somebody that has a smarter argument than I do. I don't want to be in an echo chamber I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. It's not good. Please.
Well, you're a smart guy. I love chatting with you. So my view of the isolation, because I used to be a whole food guy, and that was me like 4 years ago, and I was moving away from isolates and anti-ascorbic acid, anti-zinc, anti-vitamin D, anti-iron, like everything, pretty much. And my view now is seeing how metal accumulation, like we know everyone has tons of aluminum, but there's also arsenic.
Sure.
You had mercury fillings, you have mercury, cadmium, lead, all sorts of metals. And those will actually compete for binding sites with minerals. So you'll displace zinc. And then with that, you'll have, like, back to your antioxidant point at the beginning, you also have increased antioxidant requirements because your oxidative stress goes up because your body is trying to use, there's a metal where there should be zinc or something, so it's.
So isolates become beneficial. To this, I would say that when you're dealing with synthetics, you need to know the pharmacokinetics of it. Now you're dealing with something that if the dose is too high, it can actually hurt you. So, now you're really dealing with better living through chemistry and what can potentially work or not work. That's
but it's still a balancing act, so it's tricky taking.
It's more of a balancing act because you're playing with things that you don't have a genetic predisposition for. Your body doesn't balance on the inside. It's a lot harder for you to intuitively know what you need. And this is where really science becomes important. Thinking of an example, like if you think, here's a good example. People know the controversy of miracle mineral supplement, right? Sodium chloride. And this is where more is not a good thing. And more is separated by a drop. It's the difference between the heroin that makes you feel good and the heroin that kills you. And it's a drop or less of difference. So the dosage becomes of a different nature because now you're using things like precision scales and you're working out. Like I was trying to source pinoline, synthetic pinoline. And the lab said we have 98% available. I go, that's great. What's in the other 2%? They go, well, it's what? That's when it gets really, like when you're dealing with isolates, you have contamination issues, you have purity issues, you have rancid. As soon as you remove something from its natural protection, now you're the mother that has to make sure it doesn't go bad. And this is where people fail with isolates really badly. And as soon as you oxidize something, it's going to oxidize faster. It's like turning something into powder. Is that good? We think, it's smaller, so our bodies, but then there's the opposite. It can sour faster. So I think I'm all with you. You just have to know. You have to be. You really have to. It's a zero-sum game. You either do it right or you do it wrong.
Some people say test, don't guess, and I don't like needles, and unless it's like little insulin peptide syringes. But I've been using spectrophotometry. I didn't know Mercola's been into this, I guess, almost 10 years, but you scan the tissue of the hand, shines light in, and it's not a quantum thing. It's like physical thing.
Hmm.
And it sees the absorption or reflection of vitamins, minerals. It took a Brazilian guy, I think 12 years to figure out
Oh, wow.
the, to map not the whole periodic table, but quite a few vitamins, the minerals, the metals. And that's what I've been tracking. So I've been seeing consistent low vitamin D, which I live in the north, and low
Sure, makes sense.
B6 and low vitamin B6, which I could be tied to zinc with cryptopyloria and stuff, which
Sure.
I think I was zinc deficient from the first 30 years of my life, not eating much red meat at all. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm using as a metric of just seeing what's in my hand. And I think that's the direction that testing's going, is more of a futuristic, using light to test our levels. Because we could do biopsies, but would it be cool to just shine a light at your liver? And how much vitamin A do we have in there? Do I have to be concerned about vitamin A toxicity, or am I deficient?
And that already, those tools already exist, because in my 20s, when I realized I don't trust doctors and I want to stay as far away from them as possible, and blood tests also seemed weird to me. But you start going, how do I diagnose myself? And so I got into understanding iridology, tongue diagnosis, diagnosing the nails, diagnosing the face, what different lines mean, what different deposits or different qualities of skin, texture, and all the different, and they correlate, the tongue, everything. And I mean, we all start out as this tiny little thing and expand from there. So everything is tied together. And then a little bit more advanced, which I don't know, but the Ayurvedic doctors and their pulse diagnosis, and fantastic, that I do know, and with reference material that exists. And that saved my life, actually. It's a self-diagnosis using those traditional means. I was able to diagnose something way before a blood test. And doctor said, how'd you know? I said, I examined my tongue. They go, that doesn't work. I go, well, obviously it worked for me. So yeah, you can tell a lot about a person's, you can diagnose a person, people that are really good can just look at you and go, this is what's the problem. And we're getting closer to that with light. We're getting much closer, and other diagnostic tools that measure voltage and measure potential. But really, some people can just read you and go, oh, your C4 is, sublux, your liver is this, just because it's all in our aura. We don't have the manual, but somebody stumbles onto something and then you go, oh, how did you know? So, it's just something I've figured out. I've noticed that people that do something for a long time, they become almost otherworldly good at it, where it's just beyond, it's like, they're ahead of it. Like their temporal organ that sees in the future is so precisely ahead of it for you, because you put in the work. So that's mastery, that's real mastery. But having it in one aspect of your life doesn't mean it carries over to others. But that's where you have to keep your ego slight on a back foot, because they'll want to get on the front foot and be like, I'm the ego. See, I told you you're amazing. No, hold on. Let's keep you back there. Don't speak when you're spoken to, unless you're spoken to. So.
That's awesome. I meant to ask you this earlier, and I think this is probably a burning question, and kind of related to what we're talking about with natural versus synthetic and stuff. Like, where did deuterium come from? Probably FAQ, and I think you've said
it's natural.
We don't know, and probably
no. It's natural. We know where it comes from. It's natural. It's here's the explanation as it exists. It could be wrong. There's challenges to the Big Bang theory, but as the universe cooled, it's very profound actually, because it's even in the Bible in Genesis it says the separation of the two waters. It's two waters. And so in the beginning, or at the beginningness of something, you have the plasma, and out of that plasma comes hydrogen. And it's the only thing that exists. It's the only simplest thing in the element on the periodic chart that's number one. This is proton and electron. And then from one becomes 2 and 2 becomes 3, obviously. And that 2 is 2 protons and 1 neutron, so next element in the periodic table. But in between that, you need that neutron comes in. So, and then the universe cooled too quickly and it got stuck. It just got stuck, not knowing what it is. It's confused. Is it a hydrogen? What is it? So, in a sense, it's like the poetic explanation is that it's an unpotentiated being. If you look at a neutron, it hasn't expressed its final form yet. It's like, I'm neutral. I'm an independent voter. I haven't taken a side yet.
Oh, interesting.
But in that, eventually the game will, and the 1 becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. Eventually it will come all back to 1 because that neutron will figure out that it's just a latent proton electron. It's just that neutron is just a hydrogen waiting to be born, like a chrysalis. And that's what I understand it is. And so, because the mass doesn't add up to just a proton, so in there is a proton and electron in every neutron. So it's just hanging out. It doesn't know what it wants to be at. It's stuck. It's stuck between this and that, and it's been stuck since that time. And it jams everything up. And until that issue that happened in the very beginning of the universe gets resolved, it's always going to be this thing that doesn't belong here or there. So the only place that it gets reformed is in stars. Stars eat deuterium. So deuterium eating factors. The only thing that will take it out of the equation. And we keep getting more of it on this planet because the planet grows, comet, meteoric bombardment, has water on it that's higher in deuterium. The ice age, after the ice age and the glaciers melted, that introduced a lot of methane into the atmosphere. That increased the deuterium. We have the flood myth. There was less deuterium. People lived longer. Animals were bigger. Plants grew bigger. And then you have after the flood, things settle down to where we are today. That could be a deuterium problem. So it's always been there. It's always been there driving us forward to get it out. If you look at some profound things, I think you've had Morley Robbins on a few times. I remember one thing he was saying about the membrane. It's like the universe created a membrane to deal with oxygen. That makes a lot. Why did you create the separation? Well, I need you, but I don't need you all the time. Too much of you is too much, so I have to filter you. And so in order to benefit me, I need to filter you. We can't go. So life creates smarter and smarter strategies for energy management. And if you think about it, the highest expression of evolution for consciousness is this eyeball that is a biofeedback device. And that has the most mitochondria. That is the most successful expression of the relationship of mitochondria and the nuclear DNA that exists. And yet it's so profound. They say the eyes are the windows to the soul. And in a way, there's a truth behind that, spiritually and even mechanically. And so when you start dealing with the pineal gland and explaining all that, and so it's very profound when you start talking about converting energy from sound to light to heat, the chemistry, and ultimately to consciousness. And so we're at a incredible inflection point where you can either choose to use these tools to get to devolve, because you don't need to be smart to survive anymore. You can be stupid and still survive. Or you can use these tools to hyper jump your evolution. You go, wow, I can achieve things that have only been written down on leaves as the impossible.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have the mentality like, oh, you probably get this argument, like nature's perfect. If deuterium is natural, then why are we depleting it if it's
If nature was perfect, then it's not true, because all the fruits that we love and that we eat were suggested by nature and improved upon by humans. You wouldn't have a lemon if the human mind didn't say, I want this. We take something, which is why we're here. We can take something that's nature, and we're part of nature, and we can improve on it. right? Not in a self-respecting logical sense, but a true, like, this is something we can do over time. We can improve on nature. And that's our birthright that few of us take up as the mantle or core of our being. But we certainly can. I mean, if you believe in God and you have a conversation with God, say, what do you want from me? And God's answer is like, just something new, dude. Just something original, something I haven't seen before, please. And I've seen a lot. So if you can give me something that's new, it's like the king telling his jester, if you don't make me laugh, I'm going to kill you. Give me something new. So the universe is begging us for something new, because it does it all the time. It'll mutate a bug to have anti-gravity or something like that. It does it all the time. It creates very informed and very creative solutions, and saying, you do it too. Do it with your brain, do it with your mind, do it with your consciousness, do it for yourself, do it for the betterment of yourself, your being, and people like you. And so that we're just dealing with, it's very paradoxical, which makes me think that God's primary objective is just to laugh more and be entertained in a humorous fashion even more, because just as we're gaining the potential of these things we talked about, AI, the ability to figure out our human biochemistry, turns out our bodies and our brains are a lot smaller than they used to be. So imagine if we had this when our brain mass was 20%, 15% more than it is now. And then when our genetics weren't corrupted yet, and we didn't have to have our wisdom teeth removed all the time. And when we actually embody the unified field, and not just pretending that it doesn't exist just so we can get a paycheck and not be fired from our academic position, while we're taking drugs over here. So, but yet over here, we're solving problems that are so original and so unique. And so really more than anything is, I see people that are great at their brains and their bodies are really behind. And then I see people that have taken a preference to their health, but their mental acuity or their knowledge base or their ability to learn or model excellence is weak, and if we're going to survive, we got to go back to that person that could hunt, fish, weave, do trigonometry, do complex chemistry, fix your car, raise your kids. We have to go back to that. So you're having a podcast today. Later, you'll be milking a goat, I'm sure. So, we have to go. This is what anybody listening to this needs to align their strategy, that you become more of a multidisciplinary educated person. And when this was being discovered at the universities, in American universities in the post-war era, they discovered that if we want to make fully rounded human beings where the central nervous system is really useful to you as a holistic being, you have to have a multidisciplinary education. You have a bit of liberal arts education has a bit of that in that. But then they said, oh, this is terrible. We have to fire. They did. They got rid of that entire department, and they created the 3 bullshit majors, which is psychology, sociology, and economics. It's all just made up. And they took away, and they made you specialize instead of being a Renaissance person where you are, by the time you're 25, you should be well versed and educated in all the arts, languages, the sciences, medicine, food, how to grow something, how to build something. And yet by 25, most people are no better off than they were when they were 5 years old, asking for a handout.
Yeah. I did a live the other day, and I was talking about how when I went to college, I was like, I don't know, BEC student in high school, and even first few years of community college, like failed some classes. And then I started on raw goat milk, not from my goats, but I just bought it, farm direct, and Shilajit. And just that combination like skyrocketed.
I lost you, locked up.
Let's see.
Oh, you're back?
Are we back? Okay, we're back.
Okay.
Let me make a note.
Well, your brain had nutrition, and a brain that doesn't have nutrition is not going to, there's neural networks are not going to be turned on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the power of. Well, we have a few questions from the listeners. Do you want to jump into because some of them we haven't talked about? I thought it'd be
Were we
thought it'd be
live?
fun.
Were we live this whole time?
We were.
Oh, well, I'm glad people are listening because I tend to be a little long. I tend to be a little
Oh no.
long-winded.
Oh no, sorry, we aren't live. No, it's future live. So it's
Oh,
yeah.
future live.
Hydrogen water, and I think I asked you about this in our first chat, but I know on the Lightwater site now you guys sell a protium generator, right? Which there's a lot of
We
these
sell
water
what
bombs.
we sell. Yeah, hydrogen products. So
Hmm.
more than however you want to get hydrogen in your body, we also have a sister site, protiumgenerator.com.
Oh, cool.
And that's for inhalation devices, and for your bath, hydrogen gas. But I believe in hydrogen. I think it's a building block, and there's a lot of science behind it. And I'm always looking for ways to create it endogenously. And a healthy microbiome will produce a couple liters of hydrogen gas in your body daily. A poor microbiome will produce the wrong gases in your body. But certainly hydrogen supplementation is, I think it's a future intervention that is here to stay.
I think a lot of people might be wondering, how do you know that it's not producing deuterium isotope, like a hydrogen inhalation device or a hydrogen tablet or whatever it is?
So, for one, with the devices we sell, we recommend you use light water. that's the one. But if you are turning water into a gas, and not steam, but if you're breaking it into hydrogen and oxygen through electrolysis or whatever you're using, yeah, you're going to get some of that gas as deuterium gas. But I believe, and I think there's some science behind this, that kinetically it will favor that which is easier to crack than that which is not. Because the deuterium oxygen bond is a shorter bond, it's a tighter bond, it's easier to break the normal bond. So eventually, yes, you'll get some deuterium gas, but selectively, kinetically, I think the first will be the protium rich. But why chance it? Just use deuterium depleted water.
Well, I'm on the protiumgenerator.com and I see the bubble bath units,
Yeah.
which is fascinating. So that's a topical transdermal delivery.
Topical transdermal, and then there's an inhalation that does 3 liters per minute.
Wow. And
there's a saturation point, I think. But
can you bubble that into like hot water? Does the water hold it?
It does, but cooler is better. But if you're in bath water, 98, 99, 100 degrees, if it's continuously bubbling, you will saturate it to, you're not going to get more than what it can hold at the elevation you're at, the atmosphere that you're at. So typically 1.6 ppm, but remember, that's when you look at how many molecules of hydrogen that you're in what is it, like a quadrillion, it's a lot of hydrogen. So bath is really a great way to get it in you and also to be in a coherent field of hydrogen.
So, yeah, I can imagine in like a cold bath would be pretty nice, right? Bubble in hydrogen.
Yeah, in a cold bath, it would hold more. It would hold more hydrogen. So in a cold plunge, yeah. And when I do it, I inhale hydrogen while I'm in the hydrogen bath. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah,
I think these interventions are great if you want to get into optimal physical form. I feel like I'm pretty optimal, so I'm like drawn to this like once a week, maybe, not even like every day anymore. Because you feel good. It's like, okay, why? You feel good. What do you think? Can you feel better than good? Then you're greedy. Better is like levitating. Now I'm really like.
Well, I mean, part of the reason why I'm excited to move is I'll be on grid again, and on grid it's hard to keep like pumps going for like tubs, and I'm excited to get back into sensory deprivation therapy, which is amazing for the mind. Working online, just interacting with people, it's nice to just totally shut down for an hour, but also get that magnesium upload of 1,200 pounds is awesome. So
it's another one. However, we can get magnesium is we burn it like fuel. So I think we're all deficient in magnesium. And so, yeah, that's like, okay, how do I supplement this, with something that's not food, it's not nature and still have it be effective and work for me. That's the art. That's the art of it. That's the alchemy of it. You know, I always, when I travel around the world, I always see how, you know, how sophisticated a culture is by their cuisine, because their cuisine either has some alchemy in it or it has none. And what I mean by alchemy, I mean, are they fermenting things? What is their molecular gastronomical philosophy of things? And did it evolve over time? So is there a continuity of folk wisdom? And some cultures are very sophisticated. And then they beg further exploration and understanding them and what hidden secrets they may have for us. But if the culture is very primitive in their cuisine, then there's really not much interest in further study, at least for me. Maybe I'm missing something, but I'm always looking for, are you refining something to make it more alchemically compatible with our, you know, our species? Because we don't really belong here in a sense. We're different. So because we're different, we have to remove the inessentials until the essence is revealed. We have to refine ourselves. And this is the whole alchemical journey within and without. So I kind of look for it. If I want to find a clue that there's some internal alchemy being practiced, I'll look at if there's some external alchemy. It's usually in the sophistication of the preparation of food in your cuisine. You know,
yeah, I know you traveled to Greece and you have your B vitamin company. I'd imagine you found that over there.
They have that in certain medicine. Yeah, their approach to things. You know, it usually has to do with aging and ferment and what herbs do you grow, and they're very sophisticated and they curate the food that the bee is going to have. They think ahead. They plant the right herbs. They plant the right trees because they want a result. That's a strategy. That's a strategic thinking. It's an alchemical thinking because you're looking at not next season, but you're looking at a time that is not really in your immediate concern, right? So and they pass it from generation to generation. Like people that have home recipes of distillation, you know, it's an art, and that art, it has alchemy because you're taking something and refining it. You're making it more compatible with you. And other places, people are their cuisine is very primitive. We're more than primitive. We're manipulative in this country. Our cuisine is to manipulate you to be sick. So it's a different kind of alchemy. It's alchemy with a nefarious intent. But when you look at traditional cultures, you know, you can see which ones are more sophisticated based on their cuisine. So the Japanese are very sophisticated, very refined, you know, and so their philosophies are very refined, and their philosophy around safety and honesty, things like this. There's an alchemy that's happening because we're just a brutal ape, and we have to refine ourselves from that. Like it even says so in the Bible, you know, like everything it says about us is that we have a very negative, almost evil nature. And our job is to overcome that primal, because the limbic brain had so many more millions of years of evolution than the frontal lobe. So we have to tame ourselves. It's like, I know that, like, I wake up in the morning and I say, I can kill today. It won't hurt me at all. It might even help me, but I choose not to. And that's that consciousness that I choose not to. Instead, I choose to go plant something. So that can only be informed by a well-functioning brain. And so you can easily get in a loop where you are self-destruct. Gut doesn't work, brain doesn't work, thoughts don't work, and then that manifests into taking the wrong actions, which define you in the future. You know, your ability to create influence of something that doesn't exist now, in the future, and make good or bad choices. We're the sum total of every choice we ever made. So, and isn't it so sad that you can change that just by, like you said, some goat milk and some shilajit?
Sometimes it's that simple.
It is. It's gut brain connection. You know, if you got your gut working, you got your brain working. But how would you know to get your gut working if your brain wasn't working? That's where I think God is like laughing all the time. It's like, It's like you have the answer, but you're circling around it, and it's very funny to watch you circle. And I'm just going to have a great time laughing at your misery, laughing at your suffering, because it's totally by choice, and it's a choice that comes from not having enough information, and it's a chicken and the egg scenario. Like, can I do this if I don't know that? So that's why I'm so like. That's why I love old people and old wisdom and old knowledge, because there's somebody died for that information to give it to you, to make your life better. And they never met you. They're generations removed, but the information is here for you. And we think that we are the first. Every generation thinks it's the first that knows anything. Now, when I was young, I thought I knew everything. Now I see it. Now I see it, people half my age, they think that they know everything, and they discover something because the ego discovers it for you. And you go, this must have not been known before. Or it's like, you're lucky you stumbled on a universal principle that was brought to us before. I'm trying to understand, when did people know about deuterium depleted water and depletion? And I have to go as far back as Genesis. It says the separation of the two waters. Like, what are the two waters?
Do you think the Egyptians were doing, because now that I have my own pyramid, which I never thought I would say that, I've been looking at documentaries and things. I think can't remember the researcher's name. He went on Joe Rogan, but he was talking about how they they combined two substances that they brought in, and then it released hydrogen gas, and they were pumping that through like shafts in like the Great Pyramid, like into the Queen's area, into the King's chamber. And
well, if you know how the mitochondria works, if you have insight into the mitochondria, then you know deuterium is a problem. If you have insight into how DNA works, you know deuterium exists, and you know deuterium is a problem. So it's just a matter of how much did they know. And I have a theory about the Ark of the Covenant. That really it was a terraforming device. You bring it into the desert, and that capacitance and that electrical field that it generates, that energy, those electrons, they attract moisture, they attract life. So eventually that desert will call in the water, will call in the animals, the insects, everything, and you will make an oasis out of a desert just through energy. In this case, I don't know if it's electrical, scalar, but it's clearly of a high capacitive force, clearly amperage that would kill a human being. So, but because ultimately our goal is survival and safety. Find something to eat, and don't get eaten. Okay. And do good, and good will follow you. These are universal axioms, but you can't do it if you don't have shelter, and you don't have food, and you don't have safety. So, and every animal is looking for that. So if you plant a seed of, oh, I got water over here, that's how the mitochondria lured in the nucleus of the cell. It says, hey, I can make water. It wasn't even about an energy relationship at first. It was a relationship where I can make water for you. So that's useful to me, And so they said, let's work together. I will make sure that you have food, and you make sure I have water. And then eventually the mitochondria say, hey, I'll make your energy for you too. Or I'll make some of it. I'll take the burden off. Says, you're doing such a great job on water, and I'm doing such a great job on protection for you, the membrane and everything. Then let's evolve this marriage. Right? It's been working for almost 1.45 billion years. And in order for this relationship to exist, it constantly had to get smarter. It constantly went from simple life form to complex life form, until it's so complex that you have eyes that inform nerves here. And so this relationship, it has to ultimately perpetuate itself through survival. So it says, hey, if I can't keep this body alive, I'll survive through my progeny, I'll just replicate myself, and and teach them as much as I know, and pass on something. And then eventually we'll get to a point where where the final goal is revealed. And I like to toy with this concept that the future is of such a nature that if you can imagine it, it's not it. And that right there should put all worry aside. If you can imagine it, it's not it. You can't imagine. So don't just allow things that you may have no imagination or concept of to filter through. And yet we have things we imagine are things that we have a reference to. Like we imagine God exists. So there must be some kind of experiential reference point, something, because otherwise we wouldn't have asked the question. But imagine those things that are unimaginable. And you get into this, what? How's that possible? Well, it's not. Just be open that that's what it is. Because we know that in order for all life to exist, we break the rules of physics. We can't imagine how we do it. It happens at the quantum level with quantum tunneling. We can't possibly imagine the intelligence that created that or how that's even possible. We can't imagine how the ATP synthase nanomotor was put together by intelligent design. And yet there's no way it would have evolved by itself. So these are unimaginable things. And yet they've been imagined and they're a reason why we're here. So we break the laws of physics to exist. And it makes us uncomfortable because we try to have a control of our environment because it's so important for our safety. But then you come home and there's some guy in a black suit smoking a cigar inside your home and you don't know how he got in, and he calls you by your name, and it's spooky because it's unexpected and your safety is questioned and threatened. And yet it happened. You go, wow, I didn't imagine that was going to happen. And here it is. You got confronted with it. So we're always trying to.
Did that happen to you?
With friends I have, no. I mean, yeah, that hasn't happened to me, but I'm not working on things that they're working on, And as far as deuterium depleted water, saving humanity and getting rid of all disease, and how am I going to do that when I only have enough for a few thousand people? In order for the needle to be moved for humans, it requires humans to move the needle on energy. We're not going to get deuterium depleted water for everyone until we figure out a different form of energy that is not what we're using today.
I had a friend, actually guest I had on the show, my friend David. The other day, he was telling me his theory is that Tesla vehicles, Tesla EVs, he thinks are designed to eventually be retrofitted for a free energy generator in them. Just switch it out.
Well,
somebody
did that and they died in an explosion. So it's not time for it yet because you'll be, like Stalin said, no body, no problem, So just, what good is your invention if you're mortal? But no, yes, if you have a small device, you put it in the trunk of your Tesla and it perpetually charges it, you never have to stop it at a charging station. And if you put it up on YouTube, you may not live more than a couple of weeks. Now, conventional means strapping a generator on the back of your Tesla. I've seen that too. That's funny. But I mean something that doesn't need a fuel source. Or that's a fuel source is the ether. It's all around us. You just figured out how to transduce it from here and put it into here. And those things keep getting denied to us because of the paradigm that we're in. So until the paradigm shifts, we're not getting deuterium depleted water as a population because we already require so much more energy than we produce. Matt, if you ride a bicycle and you want to boil water, how long do you have to pedal that bicycle before you can boil your water?
I would guess 10 hours.
I don't know what it is. I think it's a half hour,
Okay.
Maybe, calories, the ability to raise water by 1 degree Celsius, right? So we produce about 60 watts of energy, of power. You could harness energy off of yourself, but you'll get 60 watts at the most, maybe a little bit more when you exercise. And if you take all the humans on this planet and divide all the energy that we produce, that we use, that we need, how many watts do you need as a member of the species of humans, that everybody's equal in terms of all the energy made, divide that by the number of humans. How much do we use? We produce 60 watts. Not in the moment, 60, no, like now, like right now, how much energy are you using? You got fridges, you got plane tickets on reserve that are going to burn carbon. You got plastic bags that were made to carry your food. You're just another human in the human experience, and everybody's equal. and how much energy they consume if you take all the energy made and divide that by the number of billions of humans. Sure, some are living in a mud hut and don't get the benefit, and some have their own private planes and really getting the benefit. But if you just, all things being equal, in this equitable world that people are trying to create, how much energy are you using right now? It's the same exact amount that I'm using.
It's a trick question.
No, it's just you don't know the answer because you haven't done the math. It's 60,000 watts.
60,000 watts.
And you produce 60. Wow. So our strategy is really unsustainable. It's not, lithium is not going to solve it.
Yeah.
We're energy hungry. Just like mitochondria are energy hungry. Look, we have to go through the most extreme act in order to feed our mitochondria, which is killing something. I mean, I don't know if there's any more extreme than killing something, but you're going to do it. You got to feed the mitochondria. So we need 60,000 watts of energy. We produce 60. So it's what is that? 600 times more. So we have to look at that and go, how are we going to, we're humans. We're not giving up that 60,000 watts. There's no way. So you're like, once you have it, you're not giving it up. You're not. You have to eat a little less, man. You're not going to do that. So now you have to go, God, how am I going to sustain this energy hunger, this hunger that I have?
I listened to Trump's first speech after the shooting, and he said, because of AI coming, he said AI is going to double the energy requirements of the United States, or the amount of energy we need to produce because of AI computing or something.
Your insatiable hunger for energy is going to double. It's going to go from 60,000 watts to 120,000 watts. But your ability to generate it will stay the same. So our only way out of this is to use this to figure out how to create that energy in a better way. Because right now, why is light water expensive? Because we use conventional forms of energy, electricity and natural gas, and that energy costs money, and you need a lot of it. To make a liter of 10 ppm, you probably need like an acre of solar panels working for. So,
is there any hydro supporting that? Because I thought you told me a year or two ago there was hydroelectricity partially going into it or something.
It can, but it's not there. You can, if you want to create a production facility to create deuterium depleted water, you need to build a power plant first. So that power plant can, if you're lucky and you put yourself in a place where you can get hydro, like where I have property, the electric there is hydro, and that's good. That's sustainable. It makes me feel good that my power source is coming from moving water, and that has minimal contaminant parts, unlike lithium or other things. I'm just saying, I don't have the answer. I mean, atomic energy is an answer. That was the original answer, but we haven't figured out how to. You're only as strong as your weakest link. So the weak links are a little scary for us right now. But this is a conversation we're having again. We were right the first time. We can just make it so we don't have the risks. The benefit's amazing. The risks are the question. So we have to figure out our energy. If I had atomic energy, then the deuterium depleted water would be very cheap. So this is where we're at. We have that same problem in our bodies. Everything is zapping us of our energy. And every time you put more energy in, at the end of the day, that burn down, there's a carbon left over. You have to breathe it out. That takes energy. So everything is an energy detriment. And so you spiral down in entropy and this mortal coil, and eventually you age and die. And I noticed that when you remove deuterium, that's a net energy benefit. It's actually spinning it the other way, away from entropy. It's more syntropic. And that's really cool because in nature, systems tend to self-organize. If you just let it, things tend to go from simple to complex until they have a fractal harmonic that is in resonance with intelligence, with super intelligence. And so same thing with us until we figure out that energy problem. And many people have in the 20th century. They just all been probably compromised, murdered, validated. because there's a paradigm that likes to perpetuate itself. And it's hard to exist in this paradigm because anything that works comes at great cost. It's just engineered that way. Anything that you like is going to be harder to attain than the slop that's given to you, as your government food, it's not, we don't have a sophisticated culture in that regard. We have a predatory society where it's harder to make evolutionary leaps because even though it's like I don't care that you can go faster. I'm going slower, so you have to go as slow as me. It's frustrating for Aquarian type beings.
I even noticed on social media, we have the meta censorship on Facebook and Instagram and stuff where they're literally flagging like even private messages. I mean, it's getting the amount of censorship's getting insane. But then you also have the societal censorship of the crab in the pot, boiling pot idea, where when, ask just honest questions that are prohibited by societal standards, you get shut down by the mob. And that's unfortunate. I mean, even in the health field, I'm talking about.
It's mob rule in the health field. If you have a voice that is alternative, the more reach you have, the more peril you expose yourself to. And this is a system that is not focused on evolution. It's focused on the safety of a few, and the rest are just used. They have their value is questionable. So the thing is platforms like this make it all so much more democratic.
Right. We have our agreements, our disagreements, and it's all cordial, respectful, and open, and just it's great.
It's decentralized in the best form, in the best sense of it. And the decent is where now, if it was structured properly, you could have a guy and you could have a kid in a mud hut in Tanzania invent a room temperature superconductor, and he wouldn't be invalidated because he's in a mud hut in Tanzania. Right? We program out the brilliance that the universe is trying to give us in every generation. So it's trying to solve our problems. So here's what we fear is a problem. Fear that humans have for other humans, and then that biological fear that you're going to get eaten.
We did have another good question, Victor, because you talked about your passion for human photosynthesis and that path of information. Someone asked sunlight exposure and its role in deuterium depletion. Red light, what is that? Kind of sunlight, red light. Yeah.
So as far as I know, it's that cytochrome C issue where you have just unlike melanin, you have just a few frequencies on the visible spectrum that affect that mitochondria. And the way it affects it, what red light is, it changes the viscosity of the metabolic water. So reduce viscosity, electrons move faster. So the sun is just a way to increase efficiency through those particular spectrums, which again, they're very limited when it comes to the mitochondria. So that is a phenomenal question. Why only these spectrums of light? Why only 660, 830 to 860? There are peaks, but then like the 700s, it's completely a dead zone, has no biological effect. But the ones in between it do, Just like, why? Why? These are phenomenal questions. And I think if we answer them, we'll get even further into understanding how our biology is created and how it works in synergy. It's just this synergistic thing that won't exist by itself, but together it makes sense. So yeah, the sun exposure is incredibly important, but then you can get deeper into what the UV index of that sun is, what latitude is that sun, what is the quality of that light. But the great thing is you can recreate this with the red light panels. What light works on the mitochondria. So now we've gotten into like some cool artificial type scenarios where we can recreate these things. It's the reason why you can live in northern climate and you have that vitamin D light.
Well, especially in my bunker, I haven't even started to dial in, the overhead lights down my hallways. And, it's going to be a whole project to figure out the optimal light. I mean,
but the thinking is from a biological perspective, mitochondrial perspective, and that's the right thinking. The questions we're asking are getting better because we're seeing further, and we can share this information outside of the dogmatic channels, like in forums like this. So that's incredibly exciting, and it all starts with asking the right question. So and the right question starts with observation and going, oh, that's weird. That's interesting. Like look at all the things Victor Schauberger learned about water just by sitting next to a running stream, enough to build a flying machine. So it's very exciting. And I'm, the only thing is that sometimes we can't see the fruits of our labor, because our lifespan is so short. So
that's true. That's why I'm getting into like long-lived structures, like the ceramic composite, geodesic dome, geoship, and then concrete, which I don't think many people are going to want to live in a bunker, but at least the ceramic material lasts for hundreds of years versus my house I'm in, it could get burned down or eaten by bugs pretty quickly.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You're trying to create, I mean, the Appian Way in Rome, that was built thousands of years ago. It's still used, it's still, take a bike ride on it, and it's still a great road. So yeah, it's interesting how, in yoga, they talk about that the bones, if you look at it, the bones can last thousands of years. Our bones are made for longevity, but the organs give up, the glands, the organs. But if you can rejuvenate those, your bones are engineered for life that far exceeds our current longevity. So those are the kind of questions like, why are the bones? Maybe we're meant to live longer. But then you look at the DNA, and according to the DNA, its usable life is like 36 years. So we, by definition of being here, we are using our intellect to bring in new information to increase our joy, our bliss.
I don't know if I ever asked you this. My buddy Leo went to the cryonics facility, Alcor, where they freeze. You pay for a thing where right when you die, they fly you into the facility, and you can do it with your pets too. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're dead. The problem is you're dead.
Yeah. It's a big problem.
That's the problem. I mean, it's a materialistic solution. It's not a holistic solution, and it's interesting. Certainly, there are some instances of deep freezing animals and bringing them back to life. And there's some videos of fish going around. I can't explain it. I never really jumped into it because I don't know who did it. But there are some. In fact, you could take a bacteria, a cyanobacteria, that's 50 million years old, and it's in salt. And they've done this, and I think the oldest was about that 50 million years ago, and they revived it. It came back to life. It was just in suspended animation. But I think it gets harder as you get a more complex life form.
That's wild.
It's wild, right? It's wild. And so again, it's those things that are impossible that are interesting to me, because if we have like stories of it, reference of it, then how impossible is it? If we can think it, then it must have happened.
We don't have hardcore data of, say, keeping my deuterium below a certain level in my body. I don't know what that is. Let's just say 80 or something. What percent that extends life?
The hardcore data is in the science of deuteronomics. It's in the mitochondria, metabolic water. It's just clues, right? So metabolically, they figured in the deuteronomics that ideally 125 your body can manage deuterium level if you're in the 120. And then also they figured out that metabolic water is 20 to 40 ppm deuterium depleted. And now there's a great study that's about to come out, hasn't been published yet, which shows clearly, it's a paper that's going to blow the biochemistry wide open, at least I think, because it's showing how the body discriminates between storing deuterium in one place and then keeping it away from another place. So That means the body knows it's a problem and it's trying to limit its use in more like you wouldn't use, like if you're making microchips and you need water, but you wouldn't use anything but deionized water. It has to be ultra pure. Well, same thing in the body. There's places where it only demands ultra purity, like that easy water layer and this fourth phase of water. But anywhere, it has to be ultra pure for that to happen. So the body has to make a discretionary judgment call between, well, if I have it low here, I'm going to have to load up something else over here to compensate. So that intelligence is what deuteronomics is explaining, because that type of isotope biochemistry didn't exist up until now. So they didn't really concern themselves so much about that the isotopes have different effects on us. And yet certain isotopes, like I wrote my theory back in 2016, endogenous radiation damage theory of aging, which is saying that it's precisely these isotopes is what's limiting our lifespan. Some of these isotopes are radioactive and they cause double strand breaks in DNA. We're a copy of a copy. And if you lose resolution over time, then there are errors, which is what AI does. It hallucinates. It doesn't have enough information, so it starts hallucinating. And you see that when it tries to paint a picture. It's like a hand missing, or it's incoherent because it doesn't have enough to go on, to fill in. It doesn't have enough to fill in the missing information. That's why HD audio is better than MP3s, because you want the missing information. Your brain can't fill it in. It tries to, but it can't always. So it's the same thing with deuterium. It's almost the opposite. It's like, hey, this needs to be removed because I cannot download the right information if there's something in the way. I can't see the sun if it's blocked. I can't see the sun if it's blocked by the moon. There's an eclipse. So same thing here. And it's something that we've created a management strategy for, but then there's a risk gain on everything. It limits our lifespan. Our lifespan is what it is. And if anything, we all wish for one thing. I want to be healthier, younger, longer, because it's almost alien to us. It's like, hey, if I can reach perfection, why can't I stay there? Oh, you're going to go up and you're going to go down. And what's causing this? Well, it's your inability to replicate properly. And that's ultimately, if energy is information is energy, it's the lack of that in your replication. So at some point it says, it's okay, it's more trouble than it's worth. Let's start again. Let's start from scratch and starts all over again. And so these types of ontological philosophical discussion is what I enjoy the most, because I think I've answered some of the questions, but the answer doesn't give you a solution. It just gives you an answer. So now it's like, okay, now how do we, it's like having a blueprint of something. It's like, we have it on paper now. Okay, let's build it. And you're going to find all these problems that you didn't realize you had when it was just on paper. Because on paper, it's perfect. Like, man, now let's build it and just really work it out. And that spirit manifests as flesh. There's things that are not perfect. But the spirit wants to continually try to shape the perfection of that thing. And Salvador Dali had a brilliant quote. He said, don't fear perfection because you'll never reach it, And mine is a little cruder. I'm not perfect because I have a crack in my ass. So we're idealists by nature. And so for me, energy is the number one thing. I see people as they age, they lose they're no longer the same as they were when they were younger. And that's the cosmic joke. Just when you have enough wisdom and experience to enjoy what life would be like in a younger body, you don't get that. So we're constantly like in this paradox. And, it ultimately it's supposed to tell us that we shouldn't take it too seriously. We should try as hard as we can, but if you're seeking enlightenment, you gotta lighten up. Is what I saw on a bumper sticker sometime. And so this is where we're at. That's where I'm at. And it's very humbling that I won't have the solutions for things. We just won't. When we're young, we think we know everything. And as we get older, we realize that there are certain universal constants that will take some type of miracle or grace to overcome. And I'm really focused on the water element because that is the foundation. That's the foundation. And that has exposed me to so many things, because if I wasn't interested in why this water tasted different than this water, I wouldn't have got into the chemistry, the science, the mysticism, the everything, right? It just all starts with that little bit of interest and understand, and not taking somebody's explanation as the truth. Saying, I'm going to go find my own, and eventually I think you find it. Again, the big cosmic joke is you find it too late. Youth is wasted on the young, and wisdom is wasted on the old. So you have to find that middle and see how long you can ride it. And
I love learning from other people. That's why I have a podcast. And I think you used the word discernment earlier. And that's, I could kind of tell just listening to somebody like yourself, I really enjoy listening to, and it's the thought process. And I could spot that pretty quickly when I'm listening to somebody new that's sharing health information. It's not that I throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily if I hear them say something wrong in my experience, but I don't know. It's just something that's like, I'm going to go a different direction and see if I jive more with this person's information. And it hasn't steered me wrong yet. So that's one of my favorite ways to learn.
It's a good process. Good levels of discernment. Yeah.
I put into words the best I could. I don't know if that, it kind of looks like that, but anyway. Last question. Someone asked, what is the right ppm for daily water consumption? So DDW, it's what are you trying to achieve, right?
I think, I just had a friend call me recently and said that he had an infection he couldn't get rid of for years. And he said, all I did, I got rid of it. And I said, what'd you do? He said, I just changed the alkalinity in my body by drinking alkaline water. And I changed the alkalinity of my food, and it killed the infections. And so in that particular case, it was a higher alkalinity, which may not be beneficial to everybody wherever they're at. Light water is perfectly neutral, 7 pH. You can't even test it because there's no ionic activity in it. So there's no ions to grab onto to even see what the charge is. But I would say that anything between 6 and 7.5 is fine, because the body is going to, sometimes more alkaline, but the body is going to adapt to the water to what it needs. So give it the basic building block, and the body will inform it what it wants, because your body's going to make that water isotonic first. So second, it's not about Robert Slovak. This is pretty much all he talks about, and makes this distinction for people, because it's very important. You might have alkaline water, but what is its buffering capacity? Because you say, oh, you're on the alkaline water craze. You go, I have 9. You think more is better. So I have 9. pH of water is 9. Look at how amazing it is. And I say, well, what is the pH after I drop 1 drop of lemon juice in it? Oh my God, look, it went all the way. Now it went to, because that means it had no buffering capacity. So the body's going to assign the buffering capacity that it needs. And ultimately, the pH of the blood is what determines. It's the most important thing is the body keeps the blood pH where it needs to be. What is it, like 7.35, 7.85, something like that? Anything outside of that, you're dead.
The question was ppm, but I'm glad you went into pH, because they meant like the ppm of deuterium in your water, like for daily use. But the pH people were probably curious about, so I'm glad you went down that.
Well, you have pH of water, you have dissolved solids, which is just the ppm of the minerals in it, and then you have the ppA of deuterium. Deuterium, it's like the lower the better, because you're still going to get it in your body from food. So if you can afford to drink 10 ppm, do it. If you can't, you'll get, I would argue, even equal benefit. You just have to be a little bit more lifestyle managed and drinking water that's 100 ppm. So you're trying to get out of your body and assume that you've accumulated already enough in your body that's going to take you a number of years to at least reduce it to something where you match somebody that living in an area where they have less deuterium environmentally and genetically. So adaptively less. So yeah, I mean, but ideally 120 is about where if we were to have the water out coming in from nature, we want water that's like in the 120s. And that's very rare. Doesn't exist in too many places. Where you live, you have a very good water in northern Idaho that goes down to the upper 130s. And so when you consider that it's 150 or higher in Texas, Florida, LA, Chicago, blah, 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 that delta becomes very significant because that's an incredible energy savings over time. Conservation of energy. It doesn't have to go toward making up for the ATP that wasn't produced and then also repairing the damage that was done. So it's a cumulative effect. And the square is inverse to the proportion of concentration, something like that, where a little basically means a small delta over time is better than a wide delta over a short period of time. So if you have a twin brother, for example, and you live over there in Idaho for 10 years and he lives in San Diego, you're going to see metabolic differences after 10 years, strictly because of that deuterium. And it's the reason why animals and birds, for example, whales to migrate thousands of miles. I mean, you consider yourself a bird and you're in the tropics. It's paradise. You've got fresh fruit, you've got sunshine, you've got a Mai Tai, and yet you migrate 3,000-4,000 miles to lay your eggs in the cold far north. Why? Because it's a deuterium management strategy. Chances of your young making it to maturity or even incubating and being born, hatching, and then making it to maturity, you have a better chance in a slight deuterium depleted environment. And that's why those migration patterns exist in nature, because it's a conservation of energy strategy they want. And they didn't read a study that says, hey, if you're a bird between the ages of 3 and 4, you want to go lay your eggs up in Manitoba. No, it's just intuitively the intelligence of all creates that, because it's a survival, and survival is, you could say hyperconscious. You could say it's a superconscious, because everything in nature is trying to survive collectively. So it may not have a conscious awareness of why it's doing something, but you do it because there's a necessity to it. You don't know that you quantum tunnel protons in your body to exist. You don't know that, but you do know it. So you do know it just because you're doing it.
That's really cool. It's amazing every spring and summer to see hummingbirds coming out, bright colors, way up here, and then they leave. I think they're already gone. I haven't seen them for a week or so.
It's the deuterium question is going to answer a lot of things in biology and science in the future. Just as we get deeper into the details of isotopes, which is the same conversation people are starting to have now around water, where there's like somewhere earlier on this than others, but now many people are questioning things that they have depended on somebody else for an honest answer. You got misled, you got misled on fat, you got misled on carbs, you got misled on sugars, you got misled on water, you got misled on breath, breathing, So we got misled on sunlight. And so it's a time to come back to not being, your first when you're misled, at first your reaction is denial. And that's where most people are, just denial. And then followed by, I don't know if that's first, maybe anger is first, and then denial. I don't know which one's first, but anger and denial come close together. And then acceptance. At some point you get acceptance. And then afterward you go, now I got to take responsibility and do something about this for myself. It's a growing pains that we go through as individuals and as members of the community and as heads of households.
With the election coming up, every 4 years, I just see this like wanting of savior. And it's like in everybody, it's like most people are like, they're waiting for ETs.
Waiting for somebody else to come and save them.
Yeah.
How many times when I had a corporate job that I wished for the meteor to come because I didn't want to go to work Monday morning. We have a collective problem. I don't have to go to work. The meteor came. Nibiru's around. Nibiru's coming. I can't possibly do my taxes. Why would I do my taxes on the 12th planet? It's just over the horizon. So yeah, but when you really get into the groundedness of man, it's all my trip, it's my responsibility, and others that also take that on for themselves. Then it's a whole different outlook on things.
Where's this conference and when's it happening?
So if you listen this far, you're meant to be there. That's the first thing I'll say. And watersymposium.org, November 8th, 9th, and 10th. And it's in Tulum, Mexico. And it's going to be 9 incredible speakers that we're going to create synergy, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And the parts that I've assembled are some great parts. And we're going to see if we can create a greater whole than. And Dr. Herrera is going to be there. Jack Cruz will be speaking. Dr. Pollock, Jerry Pollock, some unknown people that are just private, but should be, people knew them. They would be incredibly famous because new information is something they have. And all around the topic of water. If you know water, you can better know yourself, because we are like almost 99% water by molecular weight. And from the beginning, I was talking about water consciousness. And these are esoteric concepts, but together we're going to create a conference unlike anybody's experience, very intimate, only 200 people maximum, of perpetuating some concepts and ideas and knowledge that you can use, that you'll walk away with like, wow, I'm getting this is more than just theory, more than just fancy, untouchable things, but the practical knowledge that you can transform into wisdom. It'll be November 8th, 9th, and 10th. Astrologically is a very good time for new information to come in and for you to absorb it and be endowed with something that will have benefit with it. And all these people that are speaking are very advanced in their science and understanding of water, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. So if you feel called, go to watersymposium.org and buy yourself a ticket today. Do it now.
I think it's so cool that Dr. Herrera is going to be there. Yeah, human photosynthesis guy. That'll be really interesting.
I invited the cream of the crop of people there. My friend Arkady Sheeran, who's a yoga master, will talk about spiral yoga, which is not known in the West, and how water moves through the body and how that can be used to increase your health span and give yourself more time and more health and more tools to make informed decisions. And so all around the concept of something that collectively we're passionate about, which is water, because you want to know yourself, get to know your water. And symposium.org, I hope it will be the first of many, and get your ticket today.
Love it. And
Tulum, okay. Tulum is a water world. We're doing it in a place it's known for water experiences and healing experiences. So good location, good time, great speakers, and hopefully a great audience as well.
And if people can't make it, I would imagine it'll be filmed and you could purchase the footage. And
maybe I'm more interested in creating an event that is experiential. Cool. And that information exists, pieces of information exist, but when there's a synergy and you're part of I've been to a number of conferences where I felt like there was a magic that was created, and that's what I like to achieve here. So it's not the same sitting in your room at home listening to it. I think interactivity is required. So you really have to put yourself there physically. So just like we're having a great interview, but it would be a notch better if we were sitting together in the same room. It'd be more of a interactivity.
Yeah, our next interview will be in my pyramid at the top of the bunker. We'll make that happen.
Ready, that's awesome.
Drinklightwater.com, bvitamin.com. It's your honey, pollen,
Drinklightwater.com, proteumgenerator.com. These are all the projects I'm involved in. There's some others that will be revealed soon, like the SomaBed project I'm working on. Other ways to just basically increase health span and increase coherence. That's it. I want it for myself. I would be very desirous of everybody else being there as well. It would be an easier world to live in if everybody had more coherence and a higher level of consciousness. It would certainly make things more fun and less stressful. But so one person at a time, try it for yourself. You can read the studies, or you can just try 3 months of light water and get yourself Deuterium depleted to the point where you understand what energy conservation really is as you get older, and what a mitochondrial intervention really is. When all things being equal and you haven't slept for 2 days and you're walking through the airport with a bunch of luggage, you go, I'm going to sprint up those stairs. I don't need this escalator. Not like, I'm trying to better myself. It just feels better. So when you can do that, then you start to a little bit of energy and how everything is, your either expenditure of it or conservation of it, and how that informs the next decision and the next step. And so the only reason we're having this conversation is because we've designed a world for ourselves where we're so energy hungry that we can have wireless headphones, wireless microphones, cameras, electricity, the energy it took to produce all this microelectronics. It all comes back down to a collective use of energy, and then the collective within yourself, which is your cells, collectively trying to boost your level of awareness, consciousness, and safety, and your ability to not only recreate yourself, but procreate yourself. So,
Victor, it's always a blast talking to you. This is awesome. I love your passion, and
I feel I'm too long-winded, but I just get so excited about relating some of the concepts that I ponder.
I can relate to your airport example because I've done that, and the light water real testimonial. It's become an integral part of my lifestyle, and I've just been so busy preparing to move and juggling stuff that I've only been using the sauna once a week. Ideally, I'd like to use it every other day or every day or something. So once I get back into the sauna routine, I'm sure my light water consumption will go up significantly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're a faster exchange of liquids. I mean, we breathe out so much water when we sleep. Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I think it was in our first show. Did you say Dr. Mercola, when he was depleting, this was a few years ago or something,
he went down
too
really
fast?
He went down really fast. He wanted to, so, and we've tested it since. Like, you can really deplete quite quickly if you sit in a sauna like 3-4 hours a day, and you can't, you're losing a lot of water. But that water, what's interesting is we recycle about, I think you have to ask Dr. Borosh, but I think it was close to 9,000 gallons per day of water. And then we recycle, and then we need, since we lose so much water, 35% of the water we can recycle. And the rest we have to keep, getting more water in because we lose it. But that's the thing. It's identifying the fuel sources of our life, not only of our minds, but we talk about water, we talk about glucose, you talk about things that nobody else talks about in these fuel sources. Hey, we need magnesium, we need copper, we need minerals that we burn like fuel, iodine. So align with your fuel sources. Know your fuel. When your car is new, you don't care what fuel you put in. When your car is old, you drive around for the gas station with the best fuel. Because now it matters. And so these things, don't take it for granted. People that come to these types of questions earlier in life, like you, because they had a health crisis, and they want to fix it, and they're not satisfied with the fixes that exist. So that's what drives young people to this. And by the time you're old and you're driven to this, it's too late. So
that's the joke.
That's the cosmic joke. Yeah. So start early. Start making that alignment early and understanding what fuels you, both physically and mentally. Is it the right thing? Is it the thing that's going to give you longevity? I can show you many yoga masters that were in youth had it all, and the injuries made them no more. The mastery is gone because of the injury. And I can show you a few, not many, that have that same, that their knowledge actually made them better, faster, stronger in their 70s than they were in their 30s, because they followed those principles. And those principles required discipline. And that's what we don't have. And this is why almost light water is such a great cheat and a great biohack. Because if you don't have the discipline for some things, say, okay, it's okay. Forgive yourself. Just drink this. Just drink this. Lazy, drink this. Not wanting to pig out and not follow the diet that you should be. It's okay. Just drink this. You're fine. We've reduced the deuterium purposefully down to a level that is so low that it will cover you on some of the other things that you're doing maybe that's out of alignment a little bit. So, because we're always looking for a way to cheat, in a healthy way, that's called the path of least resistance.
I think it's a great thing. I think improving efficiency and ease, so we have time for other stuff.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Victor.
Yeah, this was so
fun.
Another one for the record books.
Yeah, if you guys like listening to them, go on YouTube and just search Victor Mitolife, and you can see our past shows. All of them were amazing and talked about something different every time. Even on the subject of deuterium, I was cognizant to ask you different questions this time. So I think it was perfect. So appreciate you so much. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for your passion.
Likewise, Matt. It's very appreciative of what you're doing. It's been fun to see your evolution as a person and as a businessman, and everything is ultimately how you're refining things to reach a higher level, higher ideal. And it's just wonderful to see, because that's how human beings should be, constantly evolving, constantly getting better. And look, now you've gone from 20 acres to 100 acres.
Well, instead of buying like supercars, like I see a lot of these male online role models or whatever, they're like, buy, nice watch. And if you don't have one, you're a loser, or Bugatti or a Lambo. And it's like, I'd rather make a pyramid. I'd rather spend that money on like building a pyramid and doing cool stuff that actually affects our health. I mean, investing in hyperbaric or sensory depth. I mean, to me, you could really see where a person's at in their evolution with where they spend their money. And yeah, I put so much into health and longevity and being able to help friends and family. It's not just a selfish thing. It's part of it, but being able to help people around me.
If the community that you feel a part of, if that's supported by the community, then you're basically have motivation for that. In many communities, what's encouraged is that you drive around in a Ferrari. And if you don't, then it's a measure of you. In a different community, you're measured in a wholly different way. And maybe you're measured by how many fruit trees you planted last year, So really, it's just about you could be a community of one, it's what's important to you. But ultimately, it's that thing it's why I feel so, when I lived in LA, I felt like I was a hermit, I just didn't vibe with anybody. I might as well have been living in a mountain cabin somewhere. And here I am, surrounded by millions of people, because their community did not have any effect or inform my interests. So this is good, because this is how we find our community. Like if you're listening to this and you come to our conference, guess what? You found your community. You found the people that are interested in the same exact things you are. And they can be superficial, they can be profound. People build communities around wearing furry hats, but those that seek community around understanding molecular transmutation, understanding water, understanding our divine blueprint, and that's a community that you're fortunate. If you're fortunate enough to find that, then your life will be enriched by it. And it doesn't sound like you have any interest in impressing the community of car fanatics. It's like you want to impress the community of pyramid builders.
And And worst case, you're always a community of mitochondria, right? So.
You always, exactly. There's always people to talk to, even when you're alone.
Appreciate you,
This is,
Victor.
yeah,
Thanks.
likewise.
Stick around as we close out the show. Thanks much.
Cheers.
Every time I speak with Victor, I get more inspired to consume more deuterium depleted water, or as he calls it, DDW. As I mentioned, that's all I give my 2 cats to drink, and I really credit that for their excellent health. A lot of people focus really heavily in on the food aspect, but I think, as with humans, I believe the water we drink is even more important than the food that we consume. And this is definitely a advanced tactic. As Victor said, he doesn't like the word biohack. But if you're dealing with potentially cancer, I think this plus systemic enzyme therapy and some other powerful therapies, maybe CO2 therapy or ozone, can really help in recovery and just prevention. That's really my focus. As a man, I want to stave off prostate cancer, which is very common, and drinking light water is part of my strategy for that. But as I mentioned to Victor, I give it to my 2 cats, Lava and Lyra, and I really credit their health largely to the water. I really think the water is more important than the food. A lot of people get really dialed in with the food that they give their cat or dog. I really think the water makes a bigger impact. And I don't expect my 2 cats to have any serious health issues because all they drink is the light water. We didn't get into exact protocols of how to consume it, how people are taking light water. I shared the way that I'm doing it, which is just downing an entire bottle during a sauna session. And ideally, that would be more than once a week. I've just been so busy. My average sauna time is once a week. I want to get back to daily. Hopefully, by the end of this year, I think I'll be able to do that. And that will deplete my deuterium levels in my body faster than just doing it once a week. It's like doing a water change if you've ever kept an aquarium. It was fun getting into it with him about the isolated supplements because that's a really common belief system. And that's fine if that works for people. No isolates, just whole food supplements. I was definitely in that. I would call it a religion mindset for years. And you just can't deny all of the clinical studies on isolated synthetic, quote unquote, lab made supplements. As he mentioned, methylene blue. I mean, they make concessions for certain supplements, the ones that they feel good from. And I'm not bashing Victor here, but I'm just making a point that people with that mindset tend to make exceptions like that. All synthetic isolates are bad, but methylene blue and a few others have had good experiences with, so those are good. But wait, what about all the people, the millions of people that have had incredible life-saving experiences with ascorbic acid, isolated vitamin C, or isolated zinc? I was actually messaging my friend Willie on Instagram yesterday, and he was telling me how his mom was vegetarian when she gave birth to him. And he believes that created a lot of deficiencies. So he sent me his LEGO scan, and he has been dealing with copper toxicity symptoms for quite a while, which tends to be like mood and neurological. And he said he's taking 10 grams, 10,000 milligrams of AA, ascorbic acid, vitamin C, every day. And it wasn't until he started that protocol that he's felt calmer than he ever has because of the intimate relationship between vitamin C and copper. It's really good for quote unquote copper detox to significantly up your vitamin C consumption, and not all at once, because that's the mistake that people make, and there's so much misinformation and disinformation about ascorbic acid, you have to space it out. Because yes, there's a maximum that your body can absorb, but it's in that moment. It's not over a day. And your ability to absorb massive amounts goes to the moon when you are dealing with an acute infection. But for most people, a great protocol is 1 gram every hour, every other hour, or every third hour, whatever works for you, and space it out like that. But I've consumed it while I had a viral infection several times. Every 15 minutes, I would take 2 to 3 grams. And in capsule form, like the Mitolife vitamin C, it ends up being a lot of pills. But I prefer that over the powder because it's going to be more potent. It's protected from oxygen versus a canister with powder. Every time you open that lid, you're introducing oxygen, and that vitamin C is going to oxidize a lot faster than an encapsulated product. So big tangent there from DDW, but as you know, I'm very passionate about supplements. If I didn't have a supplement company, I would still be an affiliate for a ton of companies and still talking about the benefits of supplements, especially isolated supplements. As far as water goes, there's so much out there, and everyone's trying to convince you of different things when it comes to the quality of water. I know there's quote unquote experts out there that are saying spring water is the best and the most optimal water to drink. And yet they never talk about acid rain and the effects of the Industrial Revolution on our spring water. So I'm a huge fan of filtered water, especially if it's not just simply RO, but it's a specific order of stages of filtration. And there's magnesium injected back in at the end, multiple forms of magnesium, actually, where the water is not aggressive like a lot of these people talk about. And that is the only way to do it. And that's what we did with Mitolife with the 7-stage filtration unit that I always say over and over again, it was built from scratch. We didn't private label it from a trade show at a water conference like most people do when they make a product. We built this from the ground up, took 2 years at least, found a metal worker to make the box, to mount the brackets. Everything is custom. Everything was made with love and actually sweat and tears because it was a labor of love. It's not easy to make a product like this. So that's at mitolife.co, and you can see the lab report there from National Testing Laboratories, third-party lab tested to show that it's super pure and much better than a lot of the other water filters out there. Our shower filter just came back in stock and they're already selling really quickly. It's called the KDF shower solution. And we packed as much volume of KDF 55 media as possible into that filter. You'll notice that a lot of shower filters have a ton of different, maybe 7 different types or 5 different types of filtration in them. That actually reduces the effectiveness. We're really after the effects of the KDF, and the KDF 55 and activated coconut shell carbon, like an R filter, that removes most of the chlorine. And it also removes some metals, will take out some iron, and it even softens the water somewhat. A woman reached out to me a few weeks ago and said she switched from a dual KDF filter, one that I was promoting for years. She lives in LA, and she switched to mine to see if she would feel any difference. And she said her hair feels like it's never felt before, really silky and soft, even though the other filter had 2 different types of filtration media and it was much more expensive. So that's proving my theory of having enough volume of the KDF55 in there to actually make a difference instead of trying to pack in a bunch of different bells and whistles and hoping for the best. Under the wellness tab, you can see all the Mitolife supplements. The reason why I created this line is I've been studying supplements since 2010 and looking at bottles at the supplement store and walking up and down endless health food store aisles and listening to conversations. And I've just seen people prioritize the wrong things. Before they're taking zinc and niacinamide and high quality, enough magnesium and vitamin K2 and vitamin E and shilajit. Before any of that, people are going for fish oil, coenzyme Q10, PQQ, resveratrol, different biohacking supplements, nootropics. That's why I created Mitolife, because these are the substances that I think people should be focusing on to get the best effect. We also sell grounding sheets and coffee. Find that under the living tab, and even shampoo and conditioner. A lot of people may not know. The coffee, we just released a new batch from Peru. I've been loving it, drinking 2 espresso shots a day. That stuff tastes delicious. My website is matt-blackburn.com. Working on overhauling it in the next few months and making it easier to navigate. But on the front page there, you can see the featured products. These are companies that I've partnered with, I've had on the podcast, and things that I generally use every day. My friend Adam over at Lifeblood is actually having a big sale on his amino acid products. I'm a huge fan of his taurine. It's called Toro, and it's just 1 gram of taurine per capsule in a gelatin capsule. And like Mitolife bottles, they are the bio bottles, so they're actually biodegradable. So I love purchasing his products and supporting him because those bottles are more expensive than your cheap plastic bottles. And I always feel less guilty whenever I use my own products or his, knowing that I'm not contributing to the great Pacific garbage patch in the ocean. I just purchased a bunch of the tyrosine and phenylalanine from him, the glycine, the taurine, as I mentioned, and also the creatine. Those products synergize really well with the Mitolife line, and especially with caffeine and coffee. I've been pedal to the metal this year, just working on moving to more acreage, a bigger mountain. And I've been taking a lot more taurine and glycine and creatine, just because a lot of the time my lunch is just beef jerky when I'm on the road, when I'm on the run, getting stuff done. And by taking a lot of those, I'm making sure that I'm keeping up with my amino acid intake and also balancing out the muscle meat with the glycine. So I highly recommend Lifeblood. Adam's awesome. I've had him on the show a few times. And I recommend trying a subscription with Litewater. You can see that there on the front page, Deuterium Depleted water on the Matt Blackburn site. I'm signed up for the 10 parts per million in glass subscription, but that's really when you'll feel it. Just try 2-3 months, ideally maybe 6 months on the Litewater, and see if you sleep better, see if you have more energy. I've definitely felt a difference in my energy levels when I'm consistent with drinking that water. So that's all for today. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.